Season 5, Episode 25 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers. I am Jonathan Lidskin. To my left is Sam Fetterman. Below me is Joe Jackson. We are here for our fourth of 5 conference previews, and I apologize as my fire alarm is going off in my house. So, Sam, you talk.
I was thinking, wait, is that here or is that over there?
We're all good now, but great start to the show. We're here to discuss the Big Ten, our second of 2 18-team leagues this year in college basketball. Big Ten, of course, adding Oregon, Washington, and the 2 SoCal schools to the already 14-team league. We're just going to get right into it and get going. We're going to go 1 to 18 in my rankings for this one. Get through each team in this league, what they're about, who they have coming in, who they have departing, expectations, all of that. So we will start with my number 1 team and the defending champs of this league. The Purdue Boilermakers came up just short in the national title game against UConn last year. Of course, no more complaining about how tall Zach Edey is, how he gets unfairly refereed, even though that was a complete lie and a myth made up by some media members. But this team is still very strong. You return a backcourt that has a ton of experience now in Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. You have some exciting sophomores in Miles Colvin, Camden Heide, Trey Kaufman-Wren has been talked about as a breakout candidate, and then some guys off the bench who are intriguing as well. And Joe, we'll start with you because you are the Purdue fan here, the one who roots for them. What are the expectations and what for the program post Zach Edey?
It's expectations are still to compete and win the Big Ten outright title, or not outright, but win at least a piece of the Big Ten title, and it is to make another deep run. I don't think I'm going to speak for at least large majority. I think of Purdue fans are not, naive enough to be like, hey, this team shouldn't take a step back at all, right? There's naturally going to be a step back when you lose, one of the most dominant players we've ever seen in college basketball. But there is, like you said, a lot of returning talent. Braden Smith, for as of right now, he's the best player probably in the Big Ten. By the end of the season, I think that's up. I think that's more debatable where he ends up there. But like right now, he's the best player in the Big Ten until kind of proven otherwise. You start with him. TKR Painter's gone on and on about him this summer of like, hey, TKR's like been really, really good. Trey Kaufman-Wren he's really, really good. He just played against or next to this guy named Zach Edey. And so like, we're just going to give Zach Edey the ball instead of TKR. But now that he's gone, like TKR is going to be the featured guy in the post. They like what he can bring at 6'9" of like potentially an undersized 5. Like he can take bigger dudes off the dribble a bit and more of like a high post look. He can just bury smaller guys. So I think there's a lot of and then like you said, Miles Colvin, Camden Heide, those are 2, guys that potential sophomore breakout type years. A lot of incoming freshmen, I wouldn't be shocked to see 2 or 3 make the rotation. And I'm sure we'll talk about them more in a second, but yeah, lots of talent, lots of upside. And then you also have Painter, like for all of the March woes and he finally broke through and got over the hump last year. Like he's probably the best coach in the Big Ten right now, like at this specific moment. And when you combine that, you see, I think it's like, it shocked me. I think he hasn't been like below 500 in Big Ten play or something like that in like a decade. If that feels right, or no, he one time in 2020. Yeah, he was 9-11 in Big Ten play. Before that, it was 2014. He just turns out good rosters, and this should be no different. And fans feel it should be no different.
Yeah, I look at the game that really stands out to me for TKR is the Illinois game. Edey had a lot of foul trouble. TKR comes in 23 points, 7 for 11 from inside the arc. He is absolutely ready to be the featured guy in the post. He was 64% at the rim last year, and that was obviously aided by the fact that there was this 7'4" guy that took a lot of the attention away. And that kind of is the concern that people have with Purdue, that you don't have the 7'4" guy who takes up the defensive attention. I remember there was one play in the Gonzaga game where Braden Smith was driving to the basket, and Anton Watson literally didn't he moved away from the ball just because like he was so afraid of Edie, and it was a wide open layup. And that's just one example, because I remember seeing it, posting it, and saying, "Oh wow!" And that happened a million times throughout the season. Life was, I wouldn't say easy, but it was not extremely difficult for the Purdue guards last year to create space with how much Edie did for them. I don't think TKR is going to have as much gravity. He's going to have gravity for sure, but the gravity this year is going to have to be created on the perimeter. Fletcher Lawyer is going to have to shoot the crap out of the ball. Braden Smith is going to have to shoot the crap out of the ball. They're going to have to get a lot of shooting from those guys so they can space the floor and allow for TKR to go to work in the low post.
Yeah, I think one of the things
those guys are good shooters. Like, not saying they're not. They also, but they're going to be taking more difficult shots now, and they also need more shooting, or more. I mean, Heidi and Colvin were both 40% guys last year, but pretty low volume. Who knows what they shoot this year? They need them to shoot well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's so intriguing about this Purdue team is you have really reliable guard play, which is always going to get you pretty far. And we may not know it. Joe may know this better than us, but like I'm sure most of the country doesn't know. Purdue is always one of the best in the beginning of the season of knowing what they have. And what's so intriguing about this team in that realm is that like they have like 4 or 5 guys, it feels like, that could be like really key contributors outside of Lawyer and Smith. And it's going to be pretty damn hard to guess which one is going to be that. I would personally bet on TKR taking a huge leap, as well as Colvin. Those guys are just really athletically gifted. But like, I also think that Jakari Harris will play a big role off the bench for this team. He's a really talented freshman that can play the 1 and the 2 and is a really good shooter. So I think you're not going to see as much playing through the post, even as good as TKR will be for this team. But when you have a guy like Braden Smith running the show for you, and you have a reliable shooter like Lawyer who will probably score a lot of points this year, it opens up like a ton of possibilities for other guys to sort of step up and play off of those two.
Yeah, and the bench production is going to be huge. I have no inside sources. This is pure speculation. Do not be shocked if Jakari is starting. I think what he brings is closer to that Lance Jones role. Painter wants 2 true ball handlers out there. He doesn't love Fletch being that second ball handler. I'm not saying it will happen, right? Colvin could have this huge jump. Like if you were to bet on it, right? I don't think Jakari starting is the favorite per se, but like it is not going to surprise me if at some point Jakari is starting. I also think he's just really, really good at basketball. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned like feels like the most uncertain coming into a season it's been for at least in a few years for Purdue, of like where specifically the production's coming from. Obviously, Braden, Fletch, TKR, I think I'm going to throw in there of like, you kind of know to an extent what you're going to get. The rest is like, who knows? Colvin, Heidi, Harris, Berg and or Jacobson, if one of them emerges. First is like a guy that fell off last year. Does he look better now that he could potentially have a more consistent role? CJ Cox, another freshman that's like going to just probably get minutes because he's that good right away. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Also going to be fascinating to watch what they do defensively. I think that's like, I think all the talk is always like, how is Braden going to create without Zach Edey and stuff like that? Which, by the way, like, Braden Smith's going to be fine. I watched all the minutes of Smith without Edey. Purdue is Purdue. They have a system. But the bigger question is going to be defense. Like, Edey covered up everything, and now they don't have that. And so my like concern for this team is that they turn into like, what's a good like last year's like Baylor of sorts, at least in terms of efficiencies of like really potent offense. Defense is iffy at best. And I'm not saying that will happen, but that is probably my biggest concern.
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about perimeter defense without Lance Jones. That's where Jakari Harris comes in, and you're going to need him to be really good defensively as a freshman. And how many freshmen can step right into the Big Ten and be really good perimeter defenders? It's not a ton. But again, I feel like I'm just listening to what I'm hearing Jonathan say about like Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. It's crazy to think that like, oh, these guys are now the experienced guards because there was so much discourse over the past 2 years of, oh, these guys are inexperienced. These guys are not good enough. They are too erratic. And now we know them. And last year, obviously, they proved themselves as these really stable guys. Obviously, Fletcher Lawyer was terrible in the championship game, but Braden Smith is tremendous throughout the year. As you said, coming into the season, best returning player in the Big Ten until proven otherwise. I think Colvin's going to have to be really good on the defensive end as well. I do wonder if we see any of Jacobson or Berg. We're going to have to see some of them at least. I wonder which one we see. Obviously, Berg's been in the program for a while, but Jacobson is a little bit higher regarded as a recruit and just in general. But Purdue doesn't really miss on like talent evaluation. Like we've played this story for a while. It's like when Purdue brings in a guy, like they're usually pretty good. Like even the guys that have like transferred out, like they're not like bad players. They've been productive at something. Like Aaron Wheeler ended up being like a solid piece at St. John's.
Brandon Newman.
Brandon Newman. Isaiah Thompson turned out to be a solid piece I think he turned out to be like a star at Florida Gulf Coast. If I'm thinking about the right Isaiah Thompson. Yes, I am.
No, he was
like
good.
These guys, even if they don't work out at Purdue, they hit somewhere else. So I trust Matt Painter's talent evaluation. Maybe like he's in the Kyle Smith, Dan Hurley conversation of like the best talent evaluators in the country.
Yeah, and he does it consistently, and they don't always have to be high rated. CJ Cox is going to be the next one in that group.
Yeah. Like the final thing I'll say about this team is we may not see it right away to the full extent the way we did with Smith and Lawyer their freshman year, but this class that Purdue is coming in is really, really good, and like they just like found a bunch of like underrated guys. Like I'm hoping that like Daniel Jacobson can provide some sort of like actual impact off the bench this year, because I was really impressed with his high school tape. Like he looked really advanced for like a guy that's like 7'3", 7'4", like more advanced than like you typically see out of these bigs that Purdue gets out of high school. Let's move on to my number 2 team here in the Big Ten. I took a big swing with my Big Ten rankings this year. Like this conference is always so hard to predict, but Steve Peichel can really coach defense, and now he has maybe 2 of the really elite offensive players in the country in Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. This is a Rutgers team that, like I think they would be a national championship contender if they were able to retain Cliff Amore, but that center position is probably the biggest concern on this team. But you round out the roster with not just Bailey and Harper, but Jeremiah Williams, who was good for you last year. We've heard a lot of good things about JaMychal Davis. Jordan Durkak was the player of the year in the NEC at Merrimack last year. And then Zach Martini, super reliable shooter from Princeton. They got a couple other guys that I didn't mention. But Sam, I'll start with you for this one. We did our Rutgers preview with Ellis Gordon. We talked a lot about this team. What are your thoughts on this team, and have they changed at all since we had that discussion with Ellis?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have learned the name PJ Hayes a lot more than what I knew about him back when we did that. He's been like he's gotten a lot of buzz from Rutgers as this 39% 3-point shooter at the University of San Diego last year. He made a lot of guarded catch and shoot. It was 53% unguarded, 36% guarded. He's a tremendous outside shooter. They're going to need him to be a tremendous outside shooter because they need the spacing to allow their guards to create. And I mean, obviously Ace Bailey's not a guard, but he will be a primary creator for this team. Dylan Harper, I remember when I first watched him, I thought, oh, he looks like he could be, he looks like a good passing combo. And I've gotten to the point where I'm definitely on board with him as a point guard. Jeremiah Williams, JaMychal Davis, heard great things about JaMychal Davis recently. I was surprised that he decided to stay at Rutgers, as I've said over the course of the offseason. And I think that will pay off. My concern, obviously, as is everybody's concern with this team, is the center spot. Emmanuel Akbole has proven pretty much nothing. And Lathan Somerville, I'm not sure if he's physically ready enough. He's got this like some good size, like 6'10", 230. But I think he's a little soft at that size for like he kind of fades away instead of trying to use his size in the low post. He plays with more finesse than power, and he kind of needs to be a little more assertive. But Steve Peichel can get that into him. They also brought Jay Young back, who was the Fairfield head coach and the assistant at Rutgers and Stony Brook under Pike, and he is known as a great big man coach. Obviously worked with Supreme Cook at Fairfield, who was never a great defender, but grew a lot as a post player. I think that could really help for Somerville and Ogbole this year. But it all comes down to Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. These two guys could both. They're probably not both going to be, but there's a chance that that both of them have a chance to be All-American caliber players. I think that's the way this goes with Rutgers. They're going to go as far as the freshmen take them.
Yeah, and that's like it feels redundant, but that's what it is. Is what did Harper and Bailey do? Quick note on Somerville. I could have this incorrect, but I believe he was a guy that was like a really good guard and then just hit this gigantic growth spurt later in high school. And so I think that's where some of the finesse stuff comes from. He's probably still, I think he's still like to a degree figuring out how to just be a true center. But yeah, that's going to be the big thing. Ogbole, I mean, obviously wasn't like productive last season by any means. What was he? Eight minutes a game.
Somerville's listed at 275 on the Rutgers website.
Yeah, he's.
I thought he was closer. Like I'm looking at the Burnable depth charts where he's at 225. That looked low to me. 275 seems high to me. I would like if you said he's 245, that would make sense.
If you watch the film, he doesn't look even close to 225.
No.
But yeah, I mean that'll be the big question. Like, but Ogbole is just he has the athleticism. Like he's just a big giant dude that moves well. And when you have Harper and Bailey and even Jeremiah Williams, and then you a shooter, like really you need Ogbole just to defend the rim and rebound. I'm curious to see and I'm selfishly hoping I want to see Bailey at the quote unquote 5, or with this March, whatever you want to label the positions. I don't really care at that point, but basically I want to see Williams, Davis, Harper, Bailey, insert your favorite shooter. Because I think that could be a very fun lineup. That would be, a lot of traps, 1-3-1 trap. They're going to go to that for sure. 2-3 zone. They're going to mix in press. They're going to mix in as Steve Peichel is going to do defensively. But yeah, it's going to be what do Harper and Bailey do? If Rutgers runs the same exact offense they do last year, they're obviously way better this year just because they have those two dudes that are going to now be able to create for others. They now have actual shooters surrounding them to a degree in terms of Martini and PJ Hayes. Harper and Bailey themselves are solid shooters. It is going to be interesting though. My concern is it going to be too much of just I know these guys are, maybe not generational talents, but closer to that than just good players. What happens on the Ace Bailey 4-for-19 game? What happens that day? Because
that's
assuming assuming with Bailey, what shots he does take, and credit to him because he can quite literally make any single shot on the floor. But what happens on that day? Is Rutgers just dead in the water at that point? Or are they going to be able to still find a way to win, stay competitive on the defensive end? But then there's also going to be games that Bailey's 12 for 14 and Harper's, he has 15 points and 7 assists. And yeah, Rutgers looks like an elite team. So I think, we saw with the KenPom ratings, right? KenPom has them really low. They're kind of all over the place. That feels right for this team. My early in the offseason, my prediction for this team, and honestly, it's probably the single thing I've been most right about this entire offseason. I just said that every single news outlet and stuff like that, they're going to have Rutgers 25th exactly. And I've seen them pop up 4 times there.
That's what they were in the AP poll, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's
25th.
Because then the people that put them there, they can say oh yeah, we had Rutgers in our top 25 preseason, but they don't have to have the actual confidence of being oh, they're going to be a top 15 team.
Yeah, no, this is this is going to be.
I have Rutgers 27th, so like,
Yeah.
that's the range that everyone has.
Yeah, I have them like a little higher than that, but like not by a significant amount or anything like that. Yeah, I think like this team's going to be a nightmare to play in March because like you have 2 lottery picks on this team. One of them is like a borderline elite point guard, and like their like defense travels, so like you don't want to like catch them in a tournament when like Bailey's shooting the ball really well, and like Sam has said this I think in the offseason, but like the jury is very much still out on whether like Steve Pleichel can actually like coach an offense. But I do think that like having 3 point guards and like we haven't really talked about him a ton, but I think Jeremiah Williams is super underrated. Rutgers was 2-7 in Big Ten play last year when he came back, and they finished 7-13. Like they were a complete dumpster fire until he got back last year. And then we've heard like raving reviews about JaMychal Davis. I love like that this team has 3 point guards, but like they know how they're going to play them. Like Davis and Williams will play a lot off ball, but like they also can like will be fine if the Harper needs a break.
I also think Harper can play off the ball. Like I think that was kind of the first thing when I first watched him. I thought he was really good off the ball before I even realized how good he was on the ball. I think he can be a terrific off-ball player, just giving a different look to Rutgers, whether that's Ace being a primary ball handler or whether that's J-Mike or Jeremiah.
All right, let's go to my number 3 team here. That is Indiana. Team really feels like a make or break year for Mike Woodson. He, threw together a bunch of pieces in the portal again, trying to wave the magic wand. Like I'm like somewhere in the mix of like we get to the point like after Purdue, I feel like where 2 through really 9 in this league, I think you can make a case for like any of these teams, even stretching it out to like maybe 10. If you want to include all 9 of these teams. But Indiana, like I think it's no doubt that like they have an overwhelming amount of talent compared to some of these teams in the middle of this league. And Bako is a breakout candidate. Renew has been rock solid for them for a couple of years now. Sam and I have a lot of questions about Umar Ballo and how he fits with this team, but we do really like Miles Rice as an addition from Washington State. Cannon Carlisle is another one that like he can't shoot, but he can play. And then I think like Trey Galloway and Luke Goody are going to be uber important for this team. Joe, I'll start with you. The Purdue rivals that talk so much smack on Twitter. Do we think Indiana's close to Purdue this year? What do we really think the direction of this program is under Mike Woodson?
I don't have like my official rankings done because honestly, every time I think about it, my head starts hurting. So I put it off. But like, I think I would have IU slightly ahead of Purdue right now, just barely. I'm a big believer in Miles Rice. Like I think there's a very real scenario where the state of Indiana has the 2 best point guards in the Big Ten this season. Like I believe in Miles Rice that much. And if he hits, I think it solves a lot of issues for IU just off rip. Because the shooting's going to be one that's going to be talked about. How does Ballo fit with Renew? That's another big one. I'm with you guys where it's like when it first happened, I was like, good job getting like an elite talent, terrible job finding a good fit. But like, if you trust the coaching staff, which is the other big question, then like you'd figure it out. Like, I don't know if this team, or I'll save this for the end when I'm kind of done rambling, but like, I buy some of the shooting upside too if Rice can hit, right? Because Carlisle percentage wasn't great, but if he can be more of an off-ball guy, he shot pretty well on catch and shoot looks last year, smaller sample, and obviously that can't be ignored in that fact. But like, shot 30, basically 40% on 50 catch and shoot looks last year. Small sample size, but like if that gets extrapolated, now he can be a guy that can shoot. Mbako, in theory, you're hoping he takes a sophomore jump, and then it's going to be. In my ideal world, it's you play Renew and Ballo like 10 to 15 minutes together max. And then the rest of the time, one of them's on the floor. You get a stretch 4 and Goody and or Mbako out there. And there's upside. But the question and why I'm honestly almost like hesitant not to put him above Purdue specifically, although I do have another team ahead of them both, like if I don't know, I guess I don't know your guys' actual thoughts on Mike Woodson, but if you just took like a pretty good coach, like where how much would that affect your IU ranking? And like if a pretty good coach was
Sam,
instead of
you
Woodson.
start with
I
this.
mean, I just don't trust Mike Woodson with this roster construction because he's proven time and time again that he wants to play through the post.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to help him. I don't think it's going to help them space the floor, and I don't think it's going to help Carlisle and Rice hit shots because I know they were low percentage guys, but I don't think either of those guys are like truly like terrible shooters. Like they're but I don't think it'll work if they play through the post and they can't space the floor well enough. It'll just lead to a clogging, and they won't really. Their offense is not creative. Umar Ballo was a net. Arizona was worse with him on the floor last year. They were better with Krivas. I thought they would have been fine, like playing Renew as like a small five, with how good he is as a post scorer. Mbako is like a better 4 than he is a 3. Goody can be a 3, and then you get Rice and Carlisle in the backcourt, and I think that would have been solid. That they didn't need Umar Ballo. I don't think Umar Ballo is all that great defensively. He's a great rebounder, but like was IU's biggest problem last year that they didn't rebound the ball? No, their biggest problem last year was that their offense is stuck in 1976 when they won the national championship and went undefeated. I just think Mike Woodson is behind. Like, I think when he was coaching in the NBA, I think that he got his teams to play really hard. He got like the best Knicks teams that he had. They played really hard, and they played through Carmelo. I don't think you can compare a guy as his NBA style to his college style, but I really don't think like Indiana like was playing as hard as some other teams in the Big Ten last year. Some of their bench guys really did come in and play hard, but I didn't really like what they got from their starting backcourt at all. I think getting rid of those two guys, not getting rid of, but like playing Carlisle and Rice will absolutely be an upgrade in the backcourt. But I don't really get how you play with Umar and Renew. Neither of them are floor spacers at all, and it's just you're not going to have any spacing. It's going to be a congested offense, and I don't think either of them are like truly great defenders either. Khalil Ware really hit a lot of what IU's faults were defensively. Mbako is 6'8" long, but he's not a great defender. I think Miles Rice like could be a pretty solid defender for them.
Yeah.
Carlisle, the jury is still out there. I feel like Carlisle, the jury is still out on a lot of things. I don't really know how he's going to fare off the ball. I'm interested in how much of an impact Bryson Tucker can make. I think Luke Goody is going to be in all of IU's best lineups. That's what I think.
I agree with that. Like my thing with Indiana is like, and this is going to be a weird comparison. There's an episode of How I Met Your Mother where like like this is going to be crazy. There's an episode of How I Met Your Mother.
When you said this is going to be a weird comparison, I had a million things in my head. They were all basketball teams.
Yeah, every one of them.
So let me get through this. There's an episode of How I Met Your Mother where like they all talk about like even like everyone has a but. Like you're a good person, but like you do this that's annoying. Like that's kind of how I feel about Indiana. Like you like tremendous talent, great brand, but their floor spacing is bad. But Mike Woodson's their coach. But 64 teams have finished top 25 in Ken Pom since Indiana last did. Like, and like the part of the episode that like gets me is like with Indiana fans, like if you tell them these things, like they're like insane about it. Like Sam, I remember like they came after you last year.
I ranked them 13th in the preseason last year in the Big Ten. They finished what 12th in Ken Pom in the Big Ten.
Yeah, but like because they finished 6th in conference, like they were
Yeah,
all
'cause
convinced they were way better than they actually were.
one single game jumps you from, I think legitimately the last day was like teams could finish anywhere from second to like,
They
or not second, but like third to like eighth or something, or
they
10th
won
or
the
something
last 4
stupid.
games after it was already decided that their season was over.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go to my next team, number 4. This is another team that I'm taking a huge swing on this year. I think they're destined for a bounce back, and that is the Iowa Hawkeyes. This is like the margins are so thin in the middle of this league. Like I have Iowa at 4 and like my 8th team separated by like less than 10 or 12 spots. But I think this Iowa team did a really good job addressing the issues that they had last year in the offseason. I really like the Drew Thelwell and Seydou Traore additions. I think retaining Sanford, Freeman, and a couple of these other younger players is really key for them. I think they're going to have like a ton of guys that just fit into this system where they shoot a ton of threes, but like their defense and rebounding should also like really improve. I think getting Ben Krikke out of there is going to end up being a net positive for them. Like he's a good offensive player, but just not good defensively. And Owen
He was
Freeman,
bad defensively, and even compared to like Iowa standards.
yeah, and like Owen Freeman actually is like a good defender with his athleticism. Like I like Harding off the bench for them as a backup point guard. Same thing goes for like Price Stanford. They have a lot of like really sneaky like upside underclassmen here, and I just think that like they'll improve enough in the categories that they were bad in last year to like make a substantial jump and definitely get back to the NCAA tournament.
I like Iowa. I've been high on Iowa throughout the offseason. Once they got Peyton Stanford back, I was really big on them. But I've been a little lower than I originally thought I would be. I still think they're really good, but yeah, when I look at Iowa, I see a team that is going to be much better defensively because I think that Thelwell can be a glue guy for them. Seydou, Seydou as a guy like he was a 20 plus usage last year. He's probably like a 12 usage, 13, 14 usage for Iowa this year.
Yeah.
And he will be able to exert so much more on the defensive end where he is a freak athlete that jumps out of the gym, runs really hard, and is super strong. So I think that'll really help. And Owen Freeman, Krikke was bad. Owen Freeman is a good defender. So I think having that there will really help them out on that end. Peyton Stanford could be the best. He could be the leading scorer in the Big Ten this year. I don't think that would shock a ton of people. He's a tremendous shooter. He made 94 threes last year at a 38% clip. He was efficient on good volume from 61 true shooting percentage. Really good offensive rating. Losing Tony Perkins like doesn't really bother me that much, even because I think Harding and Thelwell is a good enough duo to honestly make them maybe not like I don't think either of them are as good as Perkins, but I think the combination will probably be better. And then Josh Dix is another interesting piece that I think as another guy you can add to the equation. He can hit some shots when he needs to. He can play a little bit of defense. I think he's a good fit at that kind of secondary ball handling guy that can also play as like a true off ball if you wanted to play Thelwell and Harding together, which I think they will do at some point if they wanted to go small. If there's a certain game where Owen Freeman is like struggling with foul trouble and they want to go really small, go Seydou at the 5, Sanford at the 4, Dix at the 3, and the 2 point guards. I think Dix can play off the ball, like fully off the ball, and that could really work. And I think that Iowa is much better built this year.
Yeah, I think when I first watched their newcomer film, I was also pretty high in Iowa. and I think higher than most. And I think there are people that have started to catch up to kind of where I've had them, and even like I wouldn't have them fourth. So like even people surpassing me in that. Although like I said, the difference between fourth and like the 11th ranked team is going to be like the spread's going to be like a point difference, 2 points difference. Like we already know the Big Ten's going to be maybe not top heavy at all, but the depth's going to be wild. But no, I really like what Iowa did. Like Traore, I really like the pickup. He can be the secondary rim protector. He can be just a defensive guy that cuts on offense. Like he doesn't have to do much offensively. He'll be the fifth option there. Like that's great. I like the Thelwell pickup. He can be a true facilitator. I'm always, even if Brock Harding isn't good this year, I will always have a spot in my heart for Brock Harding, and I will always believe in him just because I love his game. And I don't think he'll probably have a super breakout year just because he'll probably be splitting with Thelwell, but I think he takes a jump. Stanford's, paying Stanford back. I don't know if I need to really go on that. Josh Dix is like, especially if Stanford didn't come back, Josh Dix would have been like the breakout guy, I think, this year in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I still have that hope for him, but I think the point of what exactly his usage looks like is going to be the question. It was 14% last year. Like I assume that jumps at least to 18 to 20 probably. And assuming he maintains his efficiency on that, like I think he could be in a really good year. I also like their freshmen, Cook and Taja. Like I think both of them could be contributors. This is a team that's just like solid across the board to me. And they have, they're not going to be an elite defensive team under Fran McCaffrey. That's just not realistic. But like if they can get, their best teams where obviously they had like Luka Garza and the Murray twins and all that, but like defenses were in the 70 to 90 range, not the 150 range. And I think that they could get back to that area, good offense to with that. And like, that's a competitive Iowa team that randomly goes 12-8 and like wins the Big Ten tournament or something, like just something kind of random like that. And I think this team kind of fits the mold, and I'm very excited to see what they do. I also just I think the Traore pickup can't be overemphasized because lots of things wrong with Iowa's defense. One of them, they allow like an insane amount of shots at the rim. But now with Freeman and Traore, like you have two potential rim protectors. Maybe the efficiency goes down, and you see where Iowa's at.
Yeah. Plus, like, I think Cooper Koch will be a good player there, but like he's not ready physically I don't think, to play in the Big Ten yet. Like maybe you see him a little as like a stretch four because like that's what he does, but like he's not ready physically on the defensive end. Traore, you're right. Like it was such an important addition. Sam, any final thoughts on the Hawkeyes before we get going here?
Not really. I think Fran is definitely getting a chance to develop these guys that he's brought in over the last few years. And that's where he really shines when he brings in those guys early and they get a chance to play a little bit. But they kind of really take that jump. You look at Dix and Harding and Freeman as three guys that were underclassmen last year. Now will step into bigger roles. And obviously Sanford, who has seen the steady growth over the course. I mean, he was 25% of the minutes his freshman year, 51% of the minutes his sophomore year, 76% of the minutes his junior year. So it's gone up pretty regimented. I doubt he plays 100% of the minutes this year to keep that going, but he's been a great development story for Iowa. And I think that it just continues to prove the point of why Fran is good at what he does.
Yeah, I've called Fran the most underrated developer in the country before, and I still stand by that. Number 5 for me is Oregon. I wrote a column for our website about a month and a half ago at this point, on teams that are undervalued to make the Final Four. And I said Oregon was one of those teams. This is a team that had to win the Pac-12 tournament to make the NCAA tournament last year. They did that, and then they advanced in the NCAA tournament. You're going to return 2 sophomores who I'm very high on. Jackson Shellstad was one of the best freshmen, not just in the Pac-12, but in the nation last year. Kwame Evans was a lot better than I thought he was going to be. The loss of N'Faly Dante hurts, but if you can keep Nate Biddle healthy, I think he's an effective player for them. And then you're hoping for kind of a bounce back year for TJ Bamba in a new place. He was much better out on the West Coast when he was at Washington State than he was at Nova. And Brandon Angel, I think is just a really rock solid player. And then you have some depth pieces here. We talked about Supreme Cook a little bit. Bartholomew is back. We'll see Raheem Moss, who comes over from Toledo, I believe, right?
Somewhere in that conference.
And then Jadrian Tracy and Mookie Cook were on the team last year. Cook, of course, was hurt. But this is a deep group, in my opinion. Joe, we'll start with you here. Your thoughts on Dana Altman's team as they look to improve this season.
Yeah, I think this is another really good roster. Or good roster. I like the shout out of like probably being undervalued for the Final Four. Like this is a team that has slowly crept up. Just kind of how I viewed them this past, really over the offseason as we've gotten closer and closer. It's like, yeah, no, this team, like they have the pieces. You mentioned Shellstad and Evans. Like Shellstad has potential all Big Ten, caliber player to him. Evans is potential all Big Ten defense type dude. I think he has that level to him. You surround him with, TJ Bamba's going to maybe not fully take over the Quiznard usage role, but like that type of, hey, just go get us a bucket. The hope is that he played on Villanova last year, and that just automatically made him worse than what he actually is. So you're hoping for the bounce back there. I like some of the depth, like you said, Raheem Moss. I think he's a really good pickup. As like, if he's your 6th or 7th man, that's one of the better 6th or 7th guys probably in the conference. Brandon Angel, another guy, like he's one of the most efficient players in the country. You just take that if you can get. He's going to be able to knock down shots from the perimeter. He's going to finish at the rim. Oregon can go super big if they want. I don't know if I fully trust it, but like they could try Angel, Evans, Biddle if they want. They could also throw Evans at the 5, right? And figure it out from there. We probably have gone too long for Oregon without saying the word injuries. And that's obviously just, they have to be healthy. And for whatever reason, the Oregon team under Altman just cannot be healthy. Last year, had like five dudes out at one point, it felt like, or whatever. But no, I think the talent is there. The depth is there. I like Altman as a coach. Like they're another team that's just kind of like solid everywhere. And they might have more upside compared to like in Iowa, right? Where it's like, maybe Iowa has a bit higher floor, but Oregon has a higher ceiling because if Shellstad and Evans take this huge jump, like they could, that's a really dynamic duo.
For me, Oregon has been maybe the most undervalued team in the country this offseason. I have them number 2 in the Big Ten. I'm huge on both sophomores, Shellstad and Kwame Evans. Shellstad, you look at a guy who comes in, can attack off the dribble. He's fearless. He can shoot from anywhere on the floor. Good playmaker as well. He's the perfect college basketball point guard that probably isn't quite athletic or big enough to be an NBA guy or an NBA guy early. So he stays around, sticks around, becomes an all-conference, maybe not All-American this year, but could be All-American down the road type point guard. And Kwame Evans, 6'9", with length. He moves really well. He can block shots. He can play a little bit on the perimeter, but a really dominant type of post 4 type guy that can also play as a 5 without really sacrificing a ton of size. And then I look at what TJ Bamba is, and I look at what Villanova did last year. Is they took a lot of these really good athletes that can get to the basket, and they just had them jack up a lot of threes. So they didn't really have an offense that made sense. Oregon has done a better job kind of designing their offense around like what they have through the years. Like last year, it was a lot of N'Faly Dante just trying to clean up stuff down low. So I think Oregon can do a better job kind of putting TJ Bamba in situations where he is getting downhill, attacking the basket, because he's really athletic and really strong at that. And Brandon Angel is kind of like a jumbo that. He can really attack the basket getting downhill. He's 6'8", and he's strong, and he's a proven high major player. I think that's a really good guy to have in the equation. They're going to be really long defensively on the wings with Angel, and Bamba is long and athletic, and Kwame is long, and he can be a wing, and he can switch out and guard wings as well. Biddle, you got to stay healthy for Nate Biddle. That's the key. I'm not the biggest Nate Biddle guy. I don't think Supreme Cook can defend a chair at the Big Ten level. I think he's a solid post scorer, He's a fine rebounder. I don't think he can guard. I didn't think he was a terrific defender in the MAC. I thought he was a horrific defender at Georgetown. And I think that if they got to play him more than 15 minutes a game, you're probably in trouble, which means Biddle has to stay healthy. Evans has to take some minutes at the 5 as well. I don't think they should be. I'm not a Mookie Cook guy. I don't think he's really going to step in and make much of an impact. I don't know what he's looked like in practice, but from the film that I saw in high school, I didn't really think he knew like where he was going on the court on defense. But I like this group of the starting 5. Raheem Moss is a solid pickup. Jadrian Tracy has a lot of experience, and Keyshawn Bartholomew is another experienced guy in there. And Dana Altman, I think, kind of reminded everyone, hey, I'm still a good basketball coach down the stretch run of last season.
Yeah, I don't have much to add from what we've already got. Like, Dana Altman's kind of coming down the home stretch in his career here. And like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if his retirement's coming up in the next couple of years. And, maybe even if he has a good year with this team, he can sort of ride off into the sunset after a couple tough years. Both a lot of unlucky stuff that has gone into that, but certainly not at the level that they were in like the late 2010s here. Let's go to my next team, number 6, the Illinois Fighting Illini. These fans were not super happy when they were unranked in the AP poll yesterday, but this is like, they may have a case, they may not. This is a team who I'm like wildly uncertain about. Like, not a lot of roster continuity here, but a tremendous amount of talent. Like, I think this roster could actually fit together pretty well if they're played the right way. Like, very interesting, like very hyped to watch Kasparis Jakaciunas. Ben Hummerkaus comes over from Evansville. He was fantastic there last year. And then they got Will Riley, a big-time reclass freshman that can score the ball. Perez Johnson was great in state product that they got. And then, you get Kylan Boswell from Arizona. There's just so many new pieces on this roster. And I'll start with Joe here. Joe, how do you think this team best fits together in order to maximize the talent they have?
I think this team Jakaciunas has to be the dude. I think he has potential to be a top 5 player in the conference. He has potential to be I'm not like a super NBA draft guy, but like he's probably has. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a lottery dude right after this year. You do not find many guys, and I mean the Rutgers probably has another dude like this, but like a 6'6" point guard that can just pass. And he's probably a little bit better passer than Harper. Harper's probably a little bit better player overall. Jakaciunas has to be the dude, and that does slide Boswell to the 2, and that's one of my more I guess interesting questions to follow, but also not like Boswell completely ran the show always at Arizona. Like, he has some level of experience being more of an off-ball guy, even though obviously he was point guard. He played next to Caleb Love, watched him shoot the ball a lot. It's going to start with Jakaciunas. If Jakaciunas is good, I think it opens up the floor for everything else, right? That's where Hummerkaus, I think, could really shine as like this pick and pop guy. Hummerkaus is also a dude that like, he can still post up. He can be in the high post. He can run pick and roll if needed to. Like, I don't think Illinois is going to use him like Damask, but like he has some of those qualities to him that if they want to go that route, they have it. Will Riley is a dude that, like, for me, I think right now he's coming off the bench, but like also he's another potential lottery guy that like makes the wildest shots I've seen. And he does it consistently. And so if he can come through, like, you're surrounding guys that can score the ball, that can attack closeouts, some shooting around an elite passing point guard in Jakaciunas. There's a lot of length. Everybody but Boswell and Gibbs Lawhorn are 6'6" and above. We'll see how good they are defensively, but like that's just a lot of length, period. Obviously, Ivisic, and as I cover the Big Ten, I should know this, but he still isn't cleared, I don't believe, unless you guys know otherwise. And I don't think they're too concerned about that. But like
another Ivisic eligibility saga.
Yeah, and if I'm wrong about that, I'll try to look it up in a sec. But if I'm wrong about that, then my bad. But like that is going to be something to monitor because the center spot is probably their biggest question. Perez Johnson could be good. Do you want to rely on a freshman like that? Kerry Booth is probably more of a stretch 4 to me. Stretch is, meaning he does have to actually shoot the ball well. So there are some questions there too, and that's why I think this team probably isn't unanimous number one, but they're kind of like Indiana in the terms of just like, man, you look at the roster and it's just like there is so much talent on this roster.
Yeah, I agree. There's a ton of talent. Kasparis Jakashunas obviously is the guy that Illinois fans have been talking about all summer because he's really good, and he's going to have to be really good. And I like what he can do on the ball. He can score. He can pass. I'm not certain how good Will Riley can be coming in immediately. He can really score. I thought, like, when I first watched him as a 25 guy, I was like, okay, this guy's one of the best scorers in this class, and I think he can really score. But he's a reclass, and I don't know how physically ready he's going to be to step up right now. Yeah, very skinny. And I think that, like, I trust Brad Underwood to get this team rolling when they need to be rolling. And I think that there's enough talent here to be a top 25 team on day one. Like, I know they weren't in the AP top 25, but like they were right there, and that's fine. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say they're like not quite a top 25 team. They're somewhere in the 20s or 30s. But the talent's there. I think I'm not a big Boswell believer right now. I was a big Boswell believer last year. I'm kind of off that train. I know Jonathan's a Merez Johnson guy. I know Jonathan's a Kerry Booth guy. I know Jonathan knows more about Hummerkaus than I do. So I'll kind of defer to Jonathan for the rest of this segment.
Really quick before you go, I want to jump in the Champagne Room, SB Nation covering Illinois. This was posted today that Ivisic is they're still waiting on him becoming eligible. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Sam kind of mentioned it. Hummerkaus was great last year. Like, it was a really big deal for Evansville when he got hurt. Like, they were kind of like not really what they were without him. He's just a super efficient offensive player. Like, actually protects the rim pretty well for a guy that's 6'9". Obviously, doing what he did from a rim protection standpoint in the Valley is different than what it is in the Big Ten, but still a really effective player. And Evansville was like significantly worse when he was out and off the floor. And then, I'm a big Will Riley guy. Like, I don't know if what he'll do in this year in terms of like production, because he is not really physically built yet, but he's scored in the spring like one of the most like efficient 40-point games like I've ever seen in an AAU game. Like, he has a chance. Like, he could end up being a lottery pick this year, but if he stays for multiple years, he has a chance to be like a special player next year at Illinois or wherever he ends up. Yeah, and I like Kerry Booth too. I thought he was I thought he stood out on film in high school. Kind of some growing pains for him last year, but I thought overall he was an effective player. We haven't really mentioned Trey White all that much, who's like probably going to start for this team. Like, he was, it's always a question mark when you're taking a guy from a team that was terrible, but like Brad Underwood, from what I've heard, has been like very positive about him, and has like really said that he stood out in practice. Like, this is the team in the conference that I think has like some of the widest range of outcomes that you could possibly have. Because I wouldn't be that surprised if like they don't mesh at all and they finish like 10th. I also wouldn't be that surprised if they won the league.
Something interesting about Illinois is that, like, in the Big Ten, like, typically we haven't seen teams like go as like we haven't seen like teams have as much turnover year to year as this particular Illinois team does. Like, there is basically nothing like Ty Rogers returns, Dre Gibbs Lawhorn returns, but like those guys are not going to be featured pieces really this year, and they weren't last year. So basically every notable piece is gone, and every notable piece that's coming in this year has some sort of string attached, a question mark attached. And that's kind of unique in the Big Ten over the past couple of years, because the Big Ten is kind of in the conference I felt that has been maybe not the least impacted by the transfer portal, but the transfer portal hasn't like it's still been a lot of grow and develop guys. Like there's still a lot of programs in the Big Ten that have been grow and develop guys or get like more experienced transfers, more proven transfers. And this Illinois team is a much different tune of team. And that doesn't mean it's going to be bad. I think Illinois can be really good.
Yeah, I mean, like the easiest comparison is like you literally look at the last 2 seasons of Illinois, and it's like I'm not shocked if either outcome is what Illinois is this year, right? Where 2 years ago it's like that's a lot of talents and they just never fits, but they were still like they weren't like a bad team by any means. Still made the tournament, 9 seed, and then obviously last year they were really really good. I mean, if it's a lot of question marks because like if Will Riley hits, like if he's good with Yakachonis this year. I know NBA talent isn't a 1-to-1 to college basketball production, but like the Big Ten could have 4 like top 10 picks if they hit, right? And that's just not heard of recently in the Big Ten. It's a lot of talent then if he does too. And you mentioned Trey White starting. Like I assume you'd have him over Rodgers then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I would guess White could probably play starters minutes. I would be shocked if Brad benches Ty Rodgers just because I think he really likes Ty Rodgers, but like I get the sentiment that like Trey White, if Trey White's your 6th man, then at that point even like it's a really good 6th man to have. So it's gonna be fascinating to watch him.
Maybe they like his scoring more off the bench. Like probably help the second unit. I think in terms of like talent, like he's one of the best 5 players on this team. So yeah, like I mean, and obviously like position factored into it. Like I just Brad does love Ty Rodgers. You're right about that. Like he's now one of 2 kids that Illinois has from Thornton on this team. So with Morez Johnson. Yep. Let's go to number 7 for my rankings, the Michigan Wolverines. I was a little higher on this team earlier in the offseason and kind of realized that like they don't really have a ton of depth, but like I think the starters are still really good and they do have like 2 guys that I like off the bench. It's just after that, how deep can they really go? Like injuries may affect this team more than they would another team. But overall, like I think their wings are great. I think Reuben Jones is awesome. Roddy Gale, I wouldn't be surprised if he leads this team in scoring. Like I think this system will be much better for him than what he was doing over at Ohio State. I've always liked Trey Donaldson. Not sure he's like a great like pure point guard, but like certainly a good shooter. Will knock down shots. And then like I'm really interested to see how Dusty May plays this front court because like I don't think Danny Wolf can really defend 4s. I don't think he's like a super great defender when he's defending 5s either, but like I do think that like he's not quick enough to guard 4s. But like regardless, like very real chance that he's this team's best offensive player and a real weapon in this conference. Sam, I'll start with you for this one. Tell me what your thoughts are about the Michigan Wolverines to start the Dusty May era.
I like Michigan. I like them a lot. I kind of wish that they got like another experienced like dribble pass shoot guard because that was kind of the way they played it, the way that Dusty played at FAU, kind of why I liked him so much. Like they played in flow, 4 guys on the perimeter that could all really move the ball, dribble pass shoot. You didn't know which one was going to be attacking the basket, which one was going to be attacking. And like they didn't have a primary ball handler. And I think that that's probably going to be the case with this team too. I don't think they're going to have one primary ball handler. And I think that that's a Dusty special. Like I like that. I don't like the idea of Golden and Wolf together like that much. It's weird to me. Like I think both of them are really good in completely different ways. And like they aren't the same, but Danny Wolf guarding 4s could be a problem. And Danny Wolf though might be the most talented player on this roster as well, though. That's the interesting thing here. I like Michigan a lot. I think they'll be able to shoot. I think they'll be able to. I think that they'll defend hard. Reuben Jones, one of the more undervalued players that I think has been picked up by anyone. All the North Texas guys, really. Jason Edwards, Aaron Scott, Reuben Jones. I like all of them. There was one other one that I liked. But I love this. I love Reuben Jones. Having Namari Burnett back is just another guy that can do some stuff. I've heard. I know, Jonathan, you were talking about LJ Kaysen earlier.
Yeah, I have a friend who follows the program very closely who is like convinced he's gonna like find a way to play.
I would be fascinated to see that. And I think, like, when I first saw this roster and like it was being put together, I think everyone's thought process was, all right, they'll platoon with Wolf and Golden, and they'll play Walters at the 4. Walters isn't the type of 4 that and this is kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about like how I wish they got another guard. Walters isn't the type of 4 that I would expect a Dusty May team to have, but I think he can really shoot, and that's really the skill that is going to get, it's the important skill here. And I don't think it's a bad thing that they have Sam Walters instead of like another guard. I think Trey Donaldson's good enough to be. I think Trey Donaldson, Roddy Gale, Reuben Jones is a really good trio.
Yeah, this team's like, it's just another team that like they have good pieces. I think I'm probably higher on the Wolf Golden fit than both of you. Although like I can't ignore like, hey, Wolf is going to have to guard 4s. I think the thought is like, if he gets blown by, Golden's going to just probably be able to in some capacity clean it up. Wolf's going to be one of my favorite players to watch offensively just because of his skill set. Like nobody really has that in the country at his size. So that's going to be fun to watch. And like, yeah, just like even like a guy like Roddy Gale, I think he's not being talked about enough. And I don't know if it's just like because Ohio State was what they were the past 2 seasons and Bruce Thornton emerged as maybe like the go-to guy, but like Roddy Gale's very good at basketball. I like his defense. He is perfect as the secondary facilitator, secondary creator if needed. You're hoping, right? The hope is that he shot poorly because he had a wrist injury all of last season, and you're just hoping that number goes up at least some because he's going to be actually healthy this year. Reuben Jones, another guy, just fits well. Like this is a team that's just like a lot of solid players, and that's the theme with the Big Ten, where it's like maybe not superstars, but like a lot of solid players. They need one of the freshman guards to emerge, whether that is Pippen. I know I've heard good things about LJ Kaysen too. And Fat Brooks even to a degree in the offseason. Like at least one of them has to emerge and take some of the minutes at a backup guard spot. But if that happens, Burnett's your backup wing, Shetter's your backup big. It's a solid 8-man rotation. I think if this team hits their ceiling, I wouldn't be shocked if it's because Wolf is the one that's like close to an all Big Ten player and not Golden. And Wolf just is able to take that jump. So Dusty May's a good coach. He has good pieces. Like that's probably going to mean that this is at least a pretty good team in some capacity.
Yeah, I think I like Justin Pippen a lot when I watched him on tape. Thought he was pretty mature for a high school point guard, and I do think he'll be able to contribute here. Like I kind of said, I think health is really important for this team, and just like it should be exciting for Michigan again that they have a coach that like is like pretty stable in terms of like running a program. Like I think Jawan did some good things, but like overall, like the running the program part of coaching college basketball was kind of a miss on his part. Let's go to number 8 here. Another team we did a full preview on with Ryan Hammer, the Maryland Terrapins. This is a team I think is much improved. The roster construction is way better than it was the year before. They just had like 0 shooters last year, and we're trying to put guys in shooting roles that really aren't shooters. I would expect a much better year from Deshaun Harris-Smith because of that. Like the additions of Jacoby Gillespie, who I'll let Sam talk about here in a sec, and Selton Miguel, another one of my guys. Another team that I think is like we're gonna have to see, like wait and see on their bench, like who's gonna step off this bench. But their first 5 are very good, and then obviously we get to Julian Reese, who's a seasoned veteran at this point for the Terrapins, and then Derek Queen, who's one of my favorite freshman bigs in the entire country. Sam, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on Jacoby Gillespie, who I don't know if you are officially picking him to win Player of the Year, but I know you thought about it.
No, but I like Jacoby Gillespie. I think more than anybody else besides like Casey Alexander likes Jacoby Gillespie, because I think that he can do so many things as your point guard. You look at his numbers at Belmont. Just if you look at his Evan Mia ratings, like there were 2 other high major transfers on that Belmont team. He was 2 Bayesian performance rating points ahead of either of them. He was 4.84 to lead that team. He was there. He had the highest offense, the highest defense on that team. They were 20 points better when he was on the floor per 100 possessions. And when he missed time, you could tell on that Belmont team. He was 72% at the rim last year on solid volume. He was 91st percentile scoring off the dribble. He's a 38% three-point shooter, and he can really pass. He's super fast. He's athletic at that size. He can play in transition. He can really be a great pick and roll guy. He can play on or off the ball, and I think he's a good on-ball defender too. He can really impact the game in a ton of different ways, and I think I know you said Miles Rice could be the second best point guard in the Big Ten. I think that it'll be either Gillespie or Jackson Chelstead.
Yeah, and I think either of them are fair. Bruce Thorne probably will have to be thrown in the mix in some capacity too.
And
like
Dylan's thrown in there too.
Yeah, there's Big Ten quietly has like, I don't know if they're going to be guard dominated, but there's a slight shift away from being like completely big dominated. Like
I think this could be like a guards league this year. Like I look at the bigs in the Big Ten this year, like
it's like there's some good ones, but it's not like elite. Yeah. And you look at this team, like talking about bigs, I think the biggest question is, what is the Queen Reese fitting, right? We just finished Michigan, and Queen doesn't have the shooting of Wolf, but he has some of that playmaking to him that, like, in theory, can make the Queen Reese pairing work. Neither of them are shooters, though, unless one of them developed it in the offseason, specifically Queen. When you play both of them, and if Deshaun Harris-Smith, even if he takes a jump, it's going to take a bit for him to be respected as a shooter, which sometimes is more important than actually making the shots. So the spacing can get clunky quick. I like Celtics Miguel a lot. I think he's one of the more underrated pickups. I like Jacoby Gillespie a lot. I think he'll be one of the better point guards in the country, country, I guess, but conference. It's going to be really just what happens with Queen and Reese. Like, there's a scenario that Queen is just that good that he kind of just takes over the center spot. And maybe they still play a few minutes together, but it's not as much as maybe they anticipate coming into the season. I know Willard's, planning on playing them a decent bit together. Reese is just such a interesting kind of polarizing player, because it's like you can look at his numbers and he basically averaged a double-double, and it's like Umar Ballo is the only other guy that returning that pretty much did that. But it's also like, Reese, how impactful is the double-double? It's going to be interesting to watch that. Chance Stevens is the guy I'm looking at off the bench. Like, I think he could just fix issues for Maryland in terms of spacing. Like, if Deshaun Harris-Smith doesn't take a jump, which I do think he will, but if he doesn't, like, Stevens is probably the guy off the bench that I trust the most. Of like, he can literally just come in, shoot threes from wherever he wants, and then play defense. And Maryland's going to desperately need that. Rodney Rice is, there's guys like Rodney Rice is interesting. Malachi Palmer, he's a very old freshman. He's 20 already. So like, he's a freshman, but like, he's an older one. He's kind of physically ready. So, okay, like, can he impact? For as much as like Queen and Reese are very good, I don't trust anybody behind them. Kapari maybe a bit, Geronimo maybe a bit, but not like elite or very good bench players. So that'll be the other thing too, is like how that's going to be the biggest thing. How do they manage those minutes? If they manage them well, the next question is shooting. We've already mentioned all the guys like that could in theory help this. So Maryland's a team. Yeah, I like him kind of in the middle of the Big Ten. Maybe some more upside to creep into the top 5-6, but they're going to be solid. Nobody's going to want to play them because they're going to force a ton of turnovers and just grind teams out too. So there's always that with them as well.
Very interested to see what Rodney Rice ends up being for this team. Like, he's had some really unfortunate injury luck, but like, this is like technically his third year removed since high school. He's played 8 college games total. Like, can he be an actual like player for this team, or at this point is he kind of just like the former 4-star that like is kind of living off like the former 4-star like next to his name?
No,
Sam, any final thoughts on this team?
No, I'm a huge I'm a huge Derek Queen fan. I've said this about Derek Queen a lot. People talk about the skill and how he's this like super skilled big. The first thing that I noticed when I watched Derek Queen is that he is really powerful and just really good around the rim. I think he blends skill and power. He's going to be a really darn good big man in college, and I think he's going to be a good NBA player as well.
Yeah, this team could be a real threat offensively if they click with between Queen's passing, Reese's ability to post up and finish inside, and then the shooting they added. Number 9 for me, this is the team that I'm like low on. That's like getting a lot of love in the preseason, and that's UCLA. Like, I totally see how this team ends up being good, and I just know I'm going to be wrong doubting Mick Cronin off a bad year in a year where he's obviously very hungry to win. But like, I think like there's also like a lot to be said that this team like is going to take some time to blend together. Like, I'm like really interested. Like Oregon State was awful the last couple years, and there's like 3 guys on that team that transferred to like notable schools that everyone like kind of likes, and Tyler Bilodeau is one of them. Like, the reviews about him have been awesome. William Kyle was a good player at South Dakota State this year, so I don't have any doubt that he'll at least be somewhat impactful. The guards are your returning pieces with Andrews and Mack, but like you also have some pretty good depth behind them with Trent Perry, Sky Clark, Dominic Harris, even. Like, this is just a super interesting team because like they have 14 like guys that can play in my eyes, and I have no idea how this is going to mesh. Like, I don't really feel like Mick Cronin's usually a guy who's like, let's bring in a ton of new players and they're all going to click. Like, he's usually a guy that's like, okay, we're going to get this core and they're going to grow together and it's going to culminate in a really good team for a couple years in the end. And this just that does not have the feel of that at all. Joe, I'll start with you on this one. What do we think is the best path to success for UCLA in terms of how they play this team?
So I'm going to start. I mentioned it briefly off the top when we were talking about Purdue and Indiana. I have UCLA 1, but like I understand them being lower, and my reasoning is like, right, the theme with this Big Ten this season, right? Like, the guys in 3 men, we've said this is quite literally the hardest conference to rank in history because there's no clear-cut superstar team. There's also no real like bottom feeder, right? Everybody's top 75 Ken Pom, and for me, UCLA having, I mean, anywhere from like up to legitimately 12 to 13 guys. I've been kind of going with the 11 mark of like, there are 11 guys that I think if they started day one, I wouldn't think twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having that depth in what is just going to be an absolute grind of a Big Ten season, I think that's going to be what kind of pushes them to number 1 for me. Also, side note, Mick Cronin at Big Ten Media Day straight up said, I have better players this year, which just made me laugh. Because that's a Mick Cronin thing to say. But going back to your question,
it'd be concerning if he didn't think that.
That's true. Going back to your question, though, I think, right, the depth is what's going to pop. It's just like they're going to have so many dudes that I think they can throw out there. It probably starts, right, Dylan Andrews is the returner. He'll be the lead guard. He's going to have to run the offense. I really like the Tyler Bilodeau fit a ton. Like, he's not Hawkes' facilitating, and that's part of what makes Hawkes so good. But like the pure scoring, I think could be somewhat similar. Kobe Johnson is the dude that might win Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah. Like there's scenarios where they're bringing like Lazar Stefanovic as like their 7th or 8th man off the bench, which would be like a great role for him as being a guy that can come in, knock down shots. The center position is going to be the biggest question, right? Kyle, can he produce at a higher level as being a bit undersized? Daymara, can he improve at all from last year? And I think if things go south, it's probably because the center position isn't there. But like, I mean, there's got like Eric Daly is a guy that like he could be, he's a former All-American, played probably way out of position last year at Oklahoma State from the film I watched. Could he be a guy that like is the 2nd or 3rd best player on this team? He also could be a guy that's the 9th man. And that's kind of the theme. Dominic Harris is another dude that like, if Sky Clark and or Sebastian Mack don't work, Harris can come in and just knock down a bunch of threes, and he could also be the 10th man. Like, that's just where I'm at with this team. I think they fit better defensively. Kobe Johnson's going to be good. I like some of the stuff from Andrews. Like, I think they'll be better defensively. They also fit in the Big Ten of just Mick Cronin's going to have no issue playing 50 to 48 if he wants to, is the final score. Like, I just look up and down. There's just they don't have the top end talent, right? They don't have that superstar that the Illinois or Rutgers or Purdue, like with Braden Smith, has. But like, there's in a conference for me that you can poke holes in every team very, very quickly. For me, with how much depth they have, it becomes easier to kind of fill in those holes and be like, okay, if that doesn't, like Sky Clark, right? I think the knock on him is he hasn't played winning basketball in 2 years. There's a scenario he doesn't need to play. Like they just have other good guards. He doesn't have to play. And that's kind of where I'm at. You get some guys that can actually help Andrews offensively, knock down some shots. Making shots would be beneficial compared to last year. And so that's where I'm at with this team. Again, with how the Big Ten is, like, I totally get why you'd have him like in the 9th area. I know they're probably consensus 5th-ish in the Big Ten. It's gonna be a wild Big Ten. Is honestly more my thought about UCLA is that the Big Ten's wild. UCLA probably has the most answers right now to me.
I think they have a lot of answers. They also have a lot of questions. Like they have a lot of questions. Yeah. They have a lot of ways that they can be good. There's a lot of different ways that this UCLA team can hit and be good. I think there's just as many ways that they could drop and be bad. That's kind of my problem. I think there's a lot of pieces here that have a big error bar that I'm not really sure what to think of. And coming in, just trying to mesh that all together, that doesn't always work. And I'm one of the lower people on UCLA just in general. I think I had them 11th when I last did a Big Ten ranking. I'm probably going to move them up a little because that's definitely a little overcorrection on what my thoughts were on UCLA last year. Obviously, Jonathan was even higher on UCLA than I was last year. I think Kyle could be good. No, I've heard good things about Dom Harris in practice. I think by the end of the year, there's a chance Trent Perry's their best player.
Yes,
and that's kind of like I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's kind of the thing for me, because you could just like name me a plausible UCLA scenario, and like you can't tell, and I'll try and tell you if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. Like, go ahead.
I don't know that like they go. What if I don't know? They have to go small, right? With centers, like neither of their centers work. They have to go like Bilodeau at the center spot or something like that.
That's a bad thing. Good guards. That's a bad thing.
Okay. I don't know. Like Sky Clark is their 7th man because he just doesn't. Him and Cronin don't mesh.
I think that's like the most lukewarm thing you could possibly say about this UCLA team.
I was gonna say Sky Clark ends up being their starting point guard down the stretch.
I think Sky Clark could be like this team, could be like a top 3 player on this team. He could also be out of the rotation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that like I think the only guy on this team that I look at and say I'm like absolutely sure that he's going to be a member of this team's like closing group down the stretch is Kobe Johnson, just because he's that good of a defender.
Kobe Johnson's going to play literally every single minute that Cronin can. Like they're the perfect match. They like if Kobe Johnson can play 40 minutes, Cronin's going to do it.
All right. Yeah, we've got to get to the next team.
All right, number 10 for me is Michigan State. I'm just gonna like come out and say it. Like Tom Izzo was one of my favorite coaches growing up. I thought the stuff they ran offensively in like the mid to late 2010s was, and even before then, was just awesome. At this point, Tom Izzo is a cranky old man who hates analytics and has fallen behind in terms of modern day coaches.
Can I kind of
somehow wait? Let me finish this. Somehow they will still end up finishing right around 500 in conference, and they will be somewhere between a 7 and 10 seed and win an NCAA tournament game.
My favorite thing about Tom Izzo, and I'm with you on the he's washed, is that every year there's like 2 or 3 games that he just comes out and like totally outclasses another good coach. Last year it was the Baylor game, and it was there was the Baylor game, the Illinois game at home, and the Mississippi State tournament game. Like he turns the clock back randomly, like 2 or 3 times a year, and he's elite. Those 3, and Tom Izzo has clearly like just kind of like seen the game pass him, but Unk still got it sometimes.
Yeah, this Michigan State team is like the more I think about it, and I'm not I'm not like a hot take from exhibition game thing, but even like watching the exhibition game, it's just like this team's probably going to struggle offensively, and it's just because Izzo is refusing to not put out the best lineup possible. He is like if the exhibition is a sign, he is insistent on playing Kohler and Cooper together, and Carr with them at the 3. You have zero spacing with that lineup. The defense is whatever. Like their defense, they're with a good their starting lineup. Their defense could be very, very good, right? A lot of switching off ball. I like Fears a lot. Um, I think Booker has a good year. I even like Zapala. Like the bit I've seen from practice and that exhibition is like he's gonna be the best center they've had in a couple years, unless I'm like completely blanking on somebody off the top of my head. Which says a bit about what they've probably since Marcus Bingham says a bit what they've had the past couple seasons at center. But I don't know. It feels bad, like wrong to rank him this low because like Izzo still has like the name value. But like they're not going to be a bad team by any means. Izzo's going to not let that happen. I don't think they're going to be a really good defense if the offense can click, right? If Fears can be this table setting point guard, if Fiddler and Akins can take, be a 1-2 scoring punch, if Booker can take a jump, there is a scenario where it's like, okay, they can play that lineup. They have decent spacing. They have good guys at point of attack, good defense. They're a good team. I just worry that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, this class was talked about very highly last year coming in. I wasn't really sold on them, but there is a world where like 2 or 3 of these guys break out and Michigan State is way better than expected. I just don't think that like this roster construction allows for the probability of that to be high. Like as much as like we've talked about this offseason, Jeremy Fears and Trey Holloman potentially breaking out, like that's a good backcourt. But like the likelihood of either of those guys being as good as Tyson Walker was last year is very slim. And like that, like so, like if you're not going to have as good of point guard play, like you're going to need like a Frankie Fiddler who played on a like okay Summit League team to step up, a breakout, like a significant skill development from like Carr or Booker. Like I never really thought of Jackson Kohler as like a high like ceiling player in high school. Like I'd like think he could be better this year, but I don't think he's like ever going to be like a stud at the college level, and especially at this level. Like really interested to see what Chase Richardson can provide for this team. Like he was like a very like janky player sometimes, but like when he shoots it, the ball goes in. So like I won't doubt guys that make shots, and he does a lot of the time. So I'm like very interested to see like what they have figured out rotation wise this year.
I think that like obviously Frankie Fiddler is a key swing piece. Like he needs to be like a 15 plus, maybe not 15, like a high scorer.
Yeah.
That can get to the basket, that can do a lot for this team. I like Xavier Booker as a 4 more than as a 5. And I think that Zapala, I liked him at Longwood. So I honestly, I think I say this every time I talk about Zapala, but like I didn't realize he entered the portal until he committed to Michigan State. And I was looking at Longwood's roster and I'm like, holy crap, Longwood's going to be like right there with High Point. They have Zapala and like all these guards because they have a lot of guards. But no, they don't have Zapala. Michigan State has Zapala, and they're trying to get him to shoot. And I think that would be interesting. I don't think they need him to shoot if Xavier Booker shoots.
Yeah.
But yeah, we need some skill development from Cohen Carr. I think there's a scenario where Trey Holloman is better than Jeremy Fears. I think Jonathan thinks that's going to happen. And I don't think that, I think that would be a bad scenario for Michigan State. I think like their top 25, 30, 40 percentile of outcomes all includes Jeremy Fears being maybe not like an all Big Ten player, but a pretty good point guard.
Yeah. Like he could, I don't know what the scoring will be. He could be a guy that's like 5th in the Big Ten in assists per game. He has that upside to him. the last thing I'll say about Michigan State is like with Xavier Booker, I'm my only hot take, and I wrote an article, 5 takeaways from the MSU exhibition game over on my Substack. The only like hot take I allowed myself to have is like Booker just might be the best player this year. And why I got to that is even when I watched MSU's like inter squad scrimmage and the exhibition, and I am, very big on, hey, these probably don't matter that much actually, but Booker was asked to create, and he didn't look bad doing it. He ran a couple pick and rolls, he attacked some closeouts. Like there was some stuff where it's just like, man, he's creating off the bounce, and if that actually comes through as a 6'11" athletic 4-man, Big Ten's gonna have a hard time guarding him. I don't know if it will. Like I'm not. That's why it's more of a hot take for me. But like, I'm not shocked if that happens.
All right, to number 11. This is where we'll probably start to speed up just a little bit. But this is a tough conference to do a preview for because like every one of these could like theoretically compete and make the tournament. Like you can make a case for every one of these teams, which you can't in other leagues. So number 11 for me. I'm gonna bet like this roster is just not good, but like I'm gonna bet that Greg Gard keeps this team at like a high floor at least, like because he usually does. Like the Wisconsin teams, they're not always like great, but like they'll usually be pretty competitive year in and year out. This is a team that is losing AJ Starr and Tyler Waugh and Chucky Hepburn, I should add, but like Max Klesmit was really good for them down the stretch. John Blackwell had his moment. Stephen Crowell kind of is what he is at this point, but what he is like a solid player. He's not great, but he's a guy that can
say my line?
What'd you say?
Can I say my line?
Go.
Stephen Crowell is on pace to win his 5th consecutive National Jag of the Year award.
I think if this team is again like way better than expected, it's not because like Klesmit, Blackwell, and Crowell have good years. I don't think we kind of already expect that. I think it's because like John Tonje ends up being one of their best players. And also they get like a huge year from a freshman I really like in Daniel Freitag, who I think actually has a chance to like start for them right away. Like this, like Cameron Hunter is currently listed on Burner Ball as like the starter at point guard. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if he was. But like Cameron Hunter also hasn't played basketball in a year. And he was at Central Arkansas playing. Like Freitag, he wasn't playing at like a super big school in Minnesota, but like every time I watched him, he was just dominating. And I think he's like a super shifty guard that could really be a change of pace from how Chucky Hepburn was playing the last couple years. Of course, like guard system doesn't always provide for like guys to play super fast, but like Freitag's like an exciting player for this program to have.
So this is reported from Evan Flood of Wisconsin Insider 247 Sports 2 hours ago. Like he reported that it looks like Kamari McGee is in the lead for the starting point guard spot.
Oh no.
I am done. I'm done. We're not letting the Rati Andronikashvili of the Big Ten start.
I don't know. Like it's reported. Who knows what'll happen? Obviously, I haven't gone super in depth.
I think the Wisconsin conversation should end right now.
All I'll say, I'll keep it short then. I like the Amos pickup a lot. I think it's almost the perfect fit next to Crowell. When Crowell's like the 3rd or 4th option, I like him. When he's the lead option, I don't like him that much. And he just can disappear not at times. He just disappears straight up. For me, the upside is like Blackwell takes maybe not a full Johnny Davis leap, but he has that kind of jump to him of like good bench production year 1, and then he's just like a star year 2. Amos is good. Nolan Winter has to take a leap. They have like 7 bigs and really only trust 2 of them right now to play. Winter would be the 3rd if he can jump. Tanjay's going to have to be good. I'm hoping long-term it's Freitag because I also do like him. If Kamari McGee's point guard, it's like I said, it was just reported. I have no clue the validity and all that stuff. Not questioning his reporting per se, but more of just like, was it a one-off type thing or whatever? That'll be interesting. I think they need one of Hunter or Freitag. If it is McGee, we'll see what happens. There's upside for this team, right? Klesmit's good, Blackwell's good, Crowell. I like Amos. There's also downside quickly of like if Amos doesn't hit and Blackwell doesn't take a jump, who is who is option 1 and who's like option 2? Like it's
Yeah.
Klesman and Crowell, and I don't love that.
Like
Yeah.
I look at Crowell, and I think it's like he, for a 7-footer, he doesn't protect the rim. Like teams aren't really afraid of him, and like they do a lot of like I think something that worked well for Wisconsin last year was just, and has worked with when they had the duo of Crowell and Wall, was kind of Crowell as like was kind of inverting them, Wall playing in the post, Crowell playing on the perimeter as just kind of like a spacing. Stephen Crowell kind of needs to shoot really like pretty well in order for Wisconsin to be pretty good this year, and they need Amos to hit. Maybe not. Obviously, needs to bring something different from what Wall did, because what Wall did was like fine, but they need like something different, because they got really stale and they don't have the shot creation that they got from Store last year. The point guard spot I'm really concerned about. I'm not a big Cameron Hunter guy. Central Arkansas, I was not a big Central Arkansas guy. Hey, I am a big Tucker Anderson guy. He was a Central Arkansas guy last year. He's at Utah State now. Watch out for him. But yeah, Klesmith, Blackwell. Like I think we, like as you said, like we expect those guys to be good. The best case scenario for Wisconsin is Amos. If Amos hits, Tanjay is back to the form that he was at Colorado State, and Hunter is able to hit shots and really just be a good point guard. That's the best scenario for Wisconsin. I still don't know if that gets them to like the top 5-6 of the conference. Like, I don't really know what their ceiling is. Probably one of the lower ones, and I'm lower in general than Jonathan is because I don't like Freitag as much.
I mean, I just like to finish my thoughts here. Like, I thought John Tonja had a chance to be like Mizzou's best player last year here, and he just he was hurt, and we never really got to see him. Like, I think if he has a bounce back year, that'll really help them. And also, like, this is like kind of irrelevant to like this team in specific and like how they'll do, but like, Joe, I'm sure you noticed this. The like Lakeville North High School, the Wisconsin pipeline is insane. Like
Yep.
they get someone from that high school every year, and it's nuts. Um, let's go on to number 12 here. That is USC. I was higher on this team at the start of the offseason when they were getting all these players, because like I think a lot of these players are good, but like this is just like UCLA if you forgot about roster construction. Like transfers at every position, like talent, a coach who like I think does a pretty good job, but like this team has no point guard. I'm not sure they have a center that can play at the Big Ten level. Their wings I think are excellent, but like you're missing like a guy who can initiate offense and like a guy who you can throw it to in the post who can get you like a bucket and consistently protect the rim.
So I'm going to cook for half a second because this has been my guy all off season ever since I watched his film. I might be the biggest St. Thomas believer
Yes,
in the
let's
world.
go.
Like I am all in on him. If he isn't good, I am very, very, very concerned about this team because I think then the creation issues really come in. Claude's going to be tasked with probably more than he should be, although I think Claude could be still good. Man, if Thomas, but St. Thomas, like I believe in him as this like jumbo point forward type of being able to set the table for others. There's obviously flaws, right? Like he's going to have to shoot the ball probably a little bit better, but he, in theory, maybe could just take a little bit better shots. Defensively, he has the upside. He just has to be, for lack of a better term, like locked in consistently on that end. There's just so many times that he just kind of stood there. But there's just really nobody in the conference, maybe the country, that like can run the point guard spot at his size. Teams are going to have, like, if he hits, he's a matchup nightmare. Do you put your 4-man on him to match the size and take away some of his post up stuff? Do you put a guard on him because you have to put your guard on somebody? I mean, Claude is another where the pairing with him at 6'6" or whatever. He's a big body too. He can work in the post if needed. He gets downhill. That's the upside for this team, right? Is Thomas and Claude are just matchup nightmares. Agbo transfers well and is a really good shooter. And they just switch everything, and it kind of covers up how they don't have a really prominent center. And you just watch USC and you kind of, the goal I think to when watching USC for them to be good is that you kind of forget that they don't have a center, and it just kind of slips the mind. That being said, most, 11 transfers, couple freshmen, like basically everybody's new, only returning Harrison Hornery. The depth could get shaky very quickly. I don't really like Slajard or Pope as true Big Ten guys. Wesley Yates is a freshman that was, redshirted last year, former top 50 guy. He might have to play just because might be the only guy that can really guard quick point guards for them. And then also, how exactly does the forward room shake out? Are you starting Terrence Williams and going for more shooting? AG is, more of the rebounder physical guy. Noling is a undersized, potentially he might be an undersized 5 for them this year that can facilitate a bit. If they want to go that route. Lots of questions.
Watched a lot of Matt Noling. I don't think he's a 5.
For USC specifically this year, more of where the 5 doesn't actually, the 5 might be St. Thomas, but he might also dribble up the ball. It's going to be very interesting to see how the roster shakes out, and that's
I might be the world's biggest Shibuzo Abo fan. He's not a 5, he's a 4. But I think what he does at that side, I was a big fan of some of the stuff that Boise State had last year, simply because they were big, they were strong, they were physical in that league, and they could hit shots. Shibuzo Abo hit a ton of shots last year. He was Boise State's big rebounder as well. He does so much. He did so much for them, and I think he'll do a lot for USC. Love St. Thomas. I think Des Claude is this team's going to be long and really tough to score on the wings and for the guards. I like that a lot. I think if Wesley Yates hits, I was really high on him coming into Washington, didn't play, he was hurt. If he hits, then this backcourt will be really good. And I think maybe give a little more credit to Josh Cohen. He's a really good back down scorer.
He did play well last year at UMass, and we didn't really think that he would be very good there. So I don't know, maybe he's just better than we keep
I don't think he's awesome or anything, but he's a pretty darn good back down scorer. He was 85th percentile in post up frequency and 98th percentile in post up efficiency. He was 1.3 points per possession on the post up, in the A10. The A10 is not the NEC. I don't think he's going to be this awesome 15-point scorer, but I don't think people are giving him enough credit for how good he is. And Eric Musselman is a great coach. This is not the type of team. This is a weird type of team, though. It could also just be the type of team that Eric Musselman kind of strings together, and just they're really athletic. They're really long. They have a bunch of guys that can hit some shots and score in peculiar ways. They have a lot of peculiar pieces, I would say. And Muss, I'm cautiously high on USC.
And this is a little bit of a cop out.
I actually had them a spot higher in my top 100 than UCLA.
And when I first went through, I had them 3 or 4 in my head. They're probably closer to that 10 to 12 now. They're literally the widest range of outcomes for me in the Big Ten. I think this ceiling is a top 3 or 4 team. I think the floor is 16th or 17th. And part of that is because of what the Big Ten is. Musselman probably won't let them slip that far, but I don't know. They're going to be fun to watch. They're also just going to be so different that they might get a couple wins because Big Ten teams just aren't used to playing them.
He did finish 108th in Ken Palm last year. So it's certainly possible that they slip. Also, I'm very glad that you all agree with me. I've been saying St. Thomas is this team's point guard since April. So
Yes.
And I know Sam is got sick of me saying it.
I get it. I think Des Claude's this team's point guard.
I think
he probably will play some point guard.
I think Thomas is more the initiator and Claude's more of the scorer. They'll both have point guard responsibilities. That's where I see it playing out.
Last thing for me on this team, we did like our top 5 like jankiest, like weirdest fits, like transfer portal, and like I didn't put him on here because I think he'll like probably end up being out of the rotation. Like I'm not sure there's a single guard in this league that Clark Sladger can guard. He is that was one of the weirdest portal additions. Like,
and I like Clark. I like Clark a lot. I watch a ton of Ivy League ball, obviously. And I know it's like a homecoming for him, but man, he could have been like all WCC at Loyola Marymount and still like gone home. Instead, he's going to play like 4 minutes a game at USC. I'm like, good for him. Like, I'm not going to tell him what to do, but yeah, I don't think he can stand defensively in the Big Ten, and it's a shame. Bryce Pope's also interesting. Played for a solid team last year at UCSD.
All right, number 13 for me is Ohio State. Like, this is a team that's obviously talented. Like, they have a lot of like former 4-5 star guys, but like inexperienced coach who I kind of question whether he's the right guy for this job. And then like the other thing that's really weird to me about this roster, they have 2 ball dominant guards in Thornton and Johnson, and like 2 bigs in quotation marks in Stewart and Bradshaw, who are both like kind of like this like athletic guy who like can't like probably not really stretching the floor. Like I know people thought Bradshaw was gonna do it at Kentucky, but I at least kind of thought like that was probably a long shot for him. Like maybe him being healthier helps them. I do think Micah Parrish is like a solid player, but I'm not sure he's like a starting caliber player in the Big
Stop
Ten.
the press. Elliot Cadeau just made a 3.
Let's go.
But yeah, I just like this is a team that I think is going to probably go through some growing pains. Michi like wasn't good at Ohio State, and like he thrived at South Carolina. I don't understand like why he left that situation. That was really good for him. Thornton is like an undeniably good player, and like is almost like a surefire pick to make all league. It feels like, but I do think there's like a part of him that's like sometimes like empty calorie, just a little bit. Joe, I'll start with you on the Buckeyes.
Yeah, this is Ohio State's the team I'm going to be most willing to be wrong about. Like it could be, I could, especially because they have a tougher schedule to start. Like if they look good the first 2 or 3 games, I'm just going to eat it and be like, yeah, that's my bad. But I'm also lower on them. And the first thing that stands out is like the spacing and shooting can go south extremely, extremely quickly. Micah Parrish, shot the ball well 2 years ago. He did not shoot the ball well last year. You're hoping that he returns. He's had I think 3 years of like 35% 3-point shooting. I'm pulling it up right now. Yeah, 35, 36, 34, and then he was 20. He was basically 30 last year. Michi and Bruce Thorne were both like 31 to 33. Sean Stewart's a 0. Bradshaw is a, hey, in theory, he can shoot. Their backup bigs not shooting there. Mahaffey's not a shooter. Judy Mobley is a very good shooter off the bench as a point guard. He's getting buzz. Are they running 3 guard lineups of 2 undersized guards and Bruce Thornton? Like, obviously the upside is right. Is you have 2 former All-Americans in Sean Stewart and Aaron Bradshaw that take these sophomore leaps. We see it time and time again. That's just kind of a cheat code, right? Bruce Thorne's one of the best point guards in the conference. Country. I don't know what I was saying there. Micah Parrish is a very good rotation player. Michi's good. Like the upside is very clearly there. I am just scared that the fit is very, very bad. I'm also not convinced that this roster is more talented than last year's roster, like straight up. And I'm with you on for me, Diebler, I'm literally coming in with a blank slate. Like there was a lot of shooting variance last year. And
Yes.
also probably just, I think there was some morale boost with Diebler coming in, and you can't take that away from Diebler by any means. And so I'm not coming in being like, oh, he wasn't the right pick. I'm also not coming in being like he was the right pick. Like if he looks like he deserves it this year, that'll be kind of forming my opinion. But for a team that has talent on paper, I am very scared that things go south quick.
Yeah, real quick before Sam goes into his thoughts here. Like if Junie Mobley is playing a lot for them, he's like also an on-ball like dominant guard, and like it's tough to play 2 on-ball dominant guards. It's even tougher if you're playing 3.
Yeah.
So the whole thing about Diebler was like, oh, you're gonna keep the guys together, and then they end up losing Okpara and Gale, and like I think those two guys, I would be a lot more confident if they had Okpara instead of Bradshaw. I think he's a much better defender. Bradshaw's got a higher ceiling offensively for sure.
Yeah,
but like they need him to pop or get they need him or Stewart to pop, probably both really.
Yeah.
And
Or Royal.
like
Off the
yeah,
bench.
I'm not really a Royal guy. Micah Parrish and Evan Mahaffey are gonna have to be like this backcourt is like a big offense slant with Thornton, Glover, Michi, and Mobley. Like they're gonna need to have some lineups where they play Parrish and Mahaffey just to be good, just like to be solid defensively, especially considering like, hey, I don't think Aaron Bradshaw is a great defender. So that's kind of where I stand. I think we're gonna learn a lot about Jake Diebler this year. But I also think that like, hey, you got to give him a shot. They made the choice to hire him, so we have to give him a shot. Probably not going to be year one. Is probably not going to be his best team. It probably won't be his. There's a good chance it's not his worst team either, though. So who knows?
Yeah. Last like real thought on Ohio State. I can't believe Quest Glover's still playing college basketball. Like,
yeah. All right, we've got to move on to the next team.
Northwestern at 14 for me. This is a tough situation to replace Boo Buie, but overall, like Joe, I saw you tweet about Brooks Barnheiser earlier today. He's a stud. Nick Martinelli could be another breakout candidate for them. Nicholson's sort of this like just like solid center that can protect the rim a little bit, do a little bit of everything out of a 7-foot center. And then like, you bring in some interesting transfers, and Jalen Leach, Keenan Fitzmaurice as well was a really solid player at Stony Brook. I'm really interested to see what they can get out of Angelo Ciarvino off the bench. I think he's an underrated freshman out of Mount Carmel High School in Chicago. It was a good pickup for them. He's got some pretty good upside, in my opinion, with his athleticism. Joe, I'll start with you here with Northwestern post Boo Buie.
I think they're going to be fine. I have also really come around on like, and this year will be the year that probably just like fully proves it, in my opinion. But like Chris Collins is just, I think, a good coach. Like I just think he's a good coach. I think there's a slight concern is, I'm a guy that covers the Big Ten. That like, if Chris Collins has a good year, I don't see why his name wouldn't be up for all whatever jobs. Yeah. Like, we'll see if he leaves, but also he's built this Northwestern program and he's got basically has like a lifetime contract at this point if he wants it. No, I still think this team's going to be solid. Like it is predicated on Barnheiser taking a leap as like going from Robin to Batman and being the guy. And as I've watched some of the film, like I think he could be the next Marcus Damask of like booty ball, high post. He does it a little bit differently. And Damask was probably a little bit better facilitator, but Barnheiser is also a much better defender than what Damask is or was. And so it's going to start with him. Ty Berry's obviously, healthy, knocking down threes will be important. Jalen Leach will be the question mark. And part of why I think Barnheiser needs to be so important is I don't know if you necessarily want Leach being your lead point guard in the Big Ten, but if you can slide him to being more off ball, I trust that a bit more. They have a good defensive system, right, where it's not predicated always on just individual defenders, but more of a pure team defense, early rotations, trapping the post always. North Nicholson's going to be able to protect the rim some. Like I think, obviously this team's ceiling is capped, but I do like the floor of this team. You mentioned Ciarvino as the freshman. I think KJ Wyndham is the freshman that like is going to just find minutes. Also, Justin Mullins, and honestly, even I kind of forgot about him until as I've done all this preview stuff, I just like looked at his name again. I was like, oh yeah, I was really high on him coming into last year. He took basically as close to a redshirt year as you can, and it was by design. He was struggling a bit, picking up like the defensive rotations and things like that. I think the upside is there. Like he could be this defensive 3-and-D guy if it hits. Yeah, I don't know. I just keep every time I think of Northwestern, I'm just like, yeah, they're gonna be feisty.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I sit with Northwestern. I've like Chris Collins is a great coach. It's a really tough spot, but like Boo Booey's the best player in program history.
Yeah,
and you don't just lose the best player in program history and be fine. Like that doesn't happen when you're a program like Northwestern. Your options when it comes to recruiting and in the transfer portal are not as plentiful as some other programs. And like Jalen Leach for a couple years was a non-factor at Fairfield because he didn't really get full off seasons. He was on and off the court with injuries. And then he totally blew up last year in a fast-paced system with 4 guards that could really space the floor and attack the basket. And he was not the primary ball handler. That would be Caleb Fields. He was the primary ball handler. So I don't think Jalen Leach is a point guard. And I think that, like, I don't really think Northwestern has a point guard, which is kind of where the Brooks Barnheiser booty ball, as you mentioned, comes into play. I think he's going to need to be maybe not like the primary ball handler, but a primary ball handler. And we mentioned this on the ACC preview with Notre Dame, like the whole Keenan Fitzmaurice thing, like just having 2 competent big men, like not just competent big men, but like 2 big men that can be physical, protect the rim, experience, grab rebounds. Like Notre Dame, when they brought in Konstantinovsky, did that. And I think that's what Northwestern does with Keenan Fitzmaurice, a guy who's been well coached. Stony Brook's had some good bigs. He's not a star. He'll be a good impact piece. And Martinelli's got to take another step. I think he's had some big games. But yeah, I look at Northwestern. I think they'll be competitive. They will beat Purdue at home because they always do.
Yeah.
Actually, no, Boo Buoy always beats Purdue at home.
That is
not
true.
necessarily Northwestern. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like Boo Buoy was like the heart and soul of the team and the best, not just the best player, the heart and soul. He was everything. Like all of their wins, like you can trace it back to like something Boo Buoy did. Like they're going to have such a change in identity without Buoy. And that's kind of what concerns me.
Yeah. Real quick, because you might know the answer to this. And is Keenan Fitzmaurice 25?
I don't know.
Okay. Because
I didn't cover enough Stony Brook to know that.
Certainly looks 25.
I'm 24, and I believe he's the only player that's older than me left in the Big Ten. Him and maybe Parker Fox too. That's beside the point. I know we need to get through this, but I knew you kind of covered that area more. I didn't know if you knew off the top of your head.
Yeah, I don't.
All right, number 15 for me. Fully acknowledge that this team can finish last in the Big Ten, but this is a really It's Washington. Washington's a really weird team for me because I think their good players are really good, but the players I don't like are really bad. Like Osibor was the best player in the Mountain West last year. I think Tyler Harris is awesome. I loved that addition, and I think DJ Davis was a good addition as well. But like, I really don't think this team has a bench at all. I don't think Louis Kortwright can play at this level. Like Frank Kepnang is what he is at this point. Kind of trust Danny Sprinkle to not finish last in the league because like that's not what he does. But this is this team has a lot of questions in terms of depth and just talent overall.
You can go.
I think it's tough to finish last when you have like a player like Great Osibor. He's like, and this team, I like what they did with DJ Davis. I liked Tyler Harris at Portland last year. Chris Conway is a good piece. I think that their best lineups like will be the stretches where they can play like Conway and Osibor and they don't need to go to Kepnang or any of their other centers because I think that'll work in stretches. And I love DJ Davis. I was big on him last year. I don't know if Louis Courtright is like I don't think he's a Big Ten caliber player. I don't think he's really close to a Big Ten caliber player. He was solid in the MAC. He was not good in the A10. He was better than our friend Sebastian Thomas in the A10, but he was not good in the A10, and now he's in the Big Ten. I don't really see how like that's like it's not the Mongolian Mike double fail upwards, but it's a fail upwards. And I don't really think Tyler Harris is a high major 3. Like I think he's a mid major 4. But like as a compliment, I think he'd be a really, really good mid major. Like if he stayed at Portland, he'd be all WCC this year. I just think that like this is kind of just like a collection of guys that they threw together. A couple of them I like, a couple of them I don't. And I think a lot of it's going to come down to how good Zoom Diallo is, and if Great Osobor is going to be able to translate as well as if he's going to be able to have like another step in him.
The one guy that you guys didn't mention that I'm high on is Mekhi Mason out of that group. Like I think he's emerges as their second or third guy. And I think he's going to be very, very important, being able to stretch the floor, being able to maybe handle the ball some. I don't think he's going to be primary. Zoom Diallo is the other dude that like he probably like if for this team to hit their ceiling, which is borderline tournament team, maybe like just in the tournament, it's probably going to be Zoom Diallo just comes in and is a very, very good freshman, and he won't be tasked with scoring a ton. Obviously with Osobor, and Osobor is going to take care of some of the facilitating and all that stuff, initiation as well. But he's probably the guy, because I agree. Courtright, Ian Nacho are fine, but I don't love them if they're your lead guard. I also like DJ Davis, and he could slide over and play point guard some. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm interested to see how much they play Osobor at the 4. I think that's what Sprinkle wants to do, is play Osobor more at the 4. Kepnang, if he stays healthy, I think they really like what he brings, especially on the defensive side. The bench is a lot of unproven guys or guys that are transferring up. Some freshmen in there. Like it's not a deep team, but you have Osobor. Danny Sprinkles wins wherever he goes as of so far. And so it makes it hard to bet on that. But then also in this Big Ten, when it's just like every team's kind of in that spot, that's why I think Washington's ending up where they are in rankings.
16 for me is Penn State. This is a team who, they're running back a lot of the same guys from last year. They were actually better once Kanye Clary got kicked off the team. Like other guys started to emerge for them. Mike Rhodes is in his second year there, so I would bet on them. I think if you want to bet on them improving, I think that's totally fair. But I also kind of think that this roster doesn't really have much juice. They're just gonna Mike Rhodes is a defensive coach, and I don't know how much they did to improve their defense from last year. Obviously Baldwin's an all-league defender, and they actually defended the 3-point line pretty well. You have some new faces in the front court, so maybe that fixes your protection. I do like the Freddie Zillion addition. I think he works defensively. What Rhodes does in terms of applying ball pressure, but I just I'm kind of questioning how much this team did to get better. Are they just banking on what they were at the end of the year without Clary?
I think in order for Penn State to be good, Eli Rice has to really hit shots. They didn't really have a dead-eye shooter last year. They need Rice to be that at 6'8", and there's been a lot of good buzz around Yannick Niederhauser this recently, and that's big for them as well, because I wasn't really sure what they were going to get out of the 5 spot. Enze, and I think Miles Goodman is a solid piece. Maybe not right now, though. And then, obviously, we know about Ace Baldwin. I loved him at VCU. He was really good in the Big Ten last year. They're just not as talented as some of the other teams in this league. Nick Kern's good, though.
If I had any courage, I would put this team 10th preseason, but I don't. So they're going to probably fall anywhere from 15 to 17 or whatever. I like the Niederhauser pickup a lot, and I think it's the defense was way worse than I expected, at least from Ken Palm and all in this statistics, and because it was literally just like Ace Baldwin, you can gamble as much as you want, and win Defensive Player of the Year in that way. We have nobody backside to help you at all, though, and they were atrocious defending the interior. I think Niederhauser, in theory, can help shore up a lot of that. Wahab probably is a little better offensively, but like you're just going to run pick and rolls with Baldwin anyways. Niederhauser can move a bit. Goodman's also an athletic guy. If he can translate right away, I think that's a big if. Yeah, I don't know. Like, because, right, this is a team where I don't think they're super deep, but they're also going to play Ace Baldwin 40 minutes. DeMarco Dunn's going to get 30 minutes. Nick Kern's going to get 38 minutes. Like, and maybe that's slight exaggerations, but like, he's going to play 6 to 8 dudes and he's going to be fine with it. Mike Rhodes. And so, like, I don't know. Like I said, they're probably going to end up somewhere to 15 to 17, but like, there's a part of me that wants to put them high because they finished 9-11 in Big Ten play last year. Like, if they didn't early in the season, if they didn't have that just god awful stretch, they lose every game in their Thanksgiving tournament, and then the Bucknell loss. Like, if they beat Bucknell, they pick up even one of those games because they were all competitive towards the end, and then they just let the lead like balloon right at the last second. They're not like a tourney team, but they're closer to a tourney team than probably what they were given credit. Baldwin's really good. I don't know. I just keep coming back to like this team's probably just going to be feisty. They're going to force an insane amount of turnovers. Ace Baldwin's going to be good, and they're just going to somehow find their way at like not 10-10 in the Big Ten again. And I don't know how it's going to happen, but it just feels like, to me, it just feels like that's somehow going to happen.
2 teams to go here on our Big Ten preview. 17 for me is Minnesota. This is a team that kind of overachieved last year. They had a decent year in Ben Johnson's 3rd year, but it definitely wasn't good enough to, I think, like get Ben Johnson off the hot seat for this year. Like, they need to have another year where they kind of overperform expectations. It's a tough school to coach at. Like, despite like the Minnesota talent, like they haven't historically won a lot, and like it doesn't seem like their NIL is really up to standard there with the way they kept some of these guys in the offseason. However, like Lucai Patterson, I think is a good player coming over from Charlotte. They have a lot of guys who I could see contributing. Wouldn't at all be surprised if Dawson Garcia was the Big Ten leader in scoring. Frank Mitchell is a really good rebounder. Like, I think this team just like I don't. It's really hard for me to project who plays on this team, like who gets the minutes. Like in theory, like Caleb Williams is like their 12th guy, but like he's a guy who Minnesota took because like he scored 40 on them in an exhibition last year and had a huge year at a D2. So D3. I just like
D3,
yeah, or D3, yeah. This is just like a insanely hard rotation to project. The only thing I'm really super confident about is like Garcia is gonna like probably lead this team in scoring and maybe lead the conference in scoring, and Patterson's your starting point guard.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton to add there. Frank Mitchell is going to grab a lot of rebounds. That's what he's always done. I hope he can make more than like 50% of his free throws this year. Femi Odokale has been in a lot of places where he's been like fine. And kind of, like that's kind of the thing with Minnesota. Like they have a lot of guys that are like, oh, okay, like fine, like whatever. And that's just not good enough in this league.
Yeah, this is a Minnesota team, and this is where just the depth of the Big Ten is going to be wild. Now, realistically, probably one team falls off. I have zero idea who it is. Like Minnesota is going to be probably the most consensus team to be picked last. There's a world where they're competing for a tournament spot, and I truly believe that. And I think that pathway is Garcia's. Whether he wins Big Ten Player of the Year or not, he is arguably the best player in the Big Ten. Mitchell looks good. Patterson and Mitchell cover spots at the 1 and 2 where they're kind of a bit interchangeable. Odokale steps up, and you get production from at least one of Fox and Mitchell, and that's a starting. It's a solid starting 5 at that point. I like Rigsby as an off the bench guy. Isaac Asuma is somebody they've hyped up a bit as an incoming point guard. Yeah, I like his game too. Like they have outs. It's just past Dawson Garcia, and I'm going to throw Mike Mitchell in there. I trust him to continue having another at least solid year. It's just a big question mark, right? And that's where they kind of puts them down at the bottom of the Big Ten is like, is it going to be Dawson Garcia's putting up 22 and they're losing by 15, or is our guys going to be able to contribute in a way that makes them competitive? We're also, I think this is going to be another pivotal year for Ben Johnson. I don't know if he's necessarily on the hot seat with how he did last year, but like a bad season puts him back on the hot seat if he isn't there already. I think he's starting to figure out what he wants to be as a coach and their identity, but now he has to implement it. Obviously, like everybody knows with what happened with, Elijah Hawkins in the offseason, where he was back and then he wasn't. And that's a tough thing.
Patterson was also back and then he wasn't.
That's true. That is very true. So yeah, I don't know. Like, again, the ceiling's probably capped for this team. They're going to be a team though that they're going to still get some Big Ten wins and be competitive, and they're not going to be the Minnesota team of 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yeah. All right.
I just, the one last thing, I like Rigsby as like an off the bench creator guy, and like the other thing about Dawson Garcia, like how good like really is he? Like every bad team has the best player. That's kind of my Dawson Garcia line. Like, yeah, we know who he is. Like he's fine. Like he is a good best player on a bad team.
All right. Last team to get to. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here because I have seen Nebraska picked anywhere from like 10th to 12th, like all off season. And I know like we're kind of splitting hairs here, but like Sam, I'm going to start with you on this once my rant's over because you like a lot of these players better than I do. Nebraska lost like one of the best offensive players in the sport, like in Casey Tominaga. He was not only like a super high usage guy, but like also really, really efficient while being depended on a ton. Rick Most and Josiah Alec were like a huge reason they weren't one of the worst rebounding teams in the entire country. And like that kind of showed against Texas A&M. Now both of them are gone. Most will be back, obviously. He's hurt, but Alec is gone. Like, I don't think this team has a one. You lost TJ Wilcher, who was another one of your big time shooters. Gary should like keep their defense like at least surface level good, but like Connor Esiason has never been able to defend at the Big Ten level, and that's like why he wasn't playing as much as people wanted him to at Wisconsin. Worcester is also like a good defender, and like Hoiberg gave them some good minutes last year, but like what are you getting off the bench out of Burke? What are you getting from Gavin Griffiths? Like there's so many what ifs with this team, and like I don't feel like they have very many answers to begin with. Like Sam, I know you're going to talk about Bryce Williams in a second. I don't know if he's a one on like a competent team.
I like Bryce Williams. I think Bryce Williams is really good. He had a great season last year, and he translated really well. He really picked it up. He can hit shots from a lot of different spots. He's big. He can move. He can hit off the dribble. He can get to the basket. So I think Bryce Williams can absolutely be a one in a top scoring option in the Big Ten. I think he could be one of the conference's top scorers this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that. I don't think the Raleigh Worcester Aaron Eulis point guard duo is like that bad. Like they're fine. Worcester was actually the top guy for Utah in on off. They were a lot worse when he wasn't there. Obviously, you could say like part of that is he played the non-conference part of their schedule and the early conference part, and he missed the more difficult parts of the schedule. But I think he's a good decision maker. Doesn't really turn it over. Eulis obviously coming back is big. Like Esiason, obviously if you're betting on Nebraska, you're betting on hits from at least two of Griffiths, Burke, and Esiason. I can really only bet that one of them is going to be good, and I don't know which one it's going to be. I'd be confident saying that like one of them probably is going to be at least solid. Gary's obviously back, and I don't think Braxton Maya is like that bad. Like you could do a lot worse than him.
And they haven't had a legit center like that in a while.
Yeah, like
size-wise.
Obviously, if they had Rank Most, I would be a lot higher on this team because I think Rank Most might have been one of the most underrated players in the Big Ten last year. but like I don't think Nebraska is that bad. Like this roster isn't that bad. Fred Hoiberg isn't that bad. Like they're gonna pick some teams off at Pinnacle Bank because everyone knows you don't just walk into Pinnacle Bank. Like this team, like they're not good, but they're not as bad as Jonathan thinks they are. So we've had some debate about them all off season.
Like it's the Big Ten is stupid. Like the Big Ten is just stupid this year, and because Nebraska could be solid and like still be the worst team in the Big Ten. I don't think I would put them there personally, but like they're in that group where it's like, oh yeah, they're 18th. That's probably because this little thing happened, and they're the team that ended up with 5 Big Ten wins instead of 6, right? And that's all the difference. But yeah, I really like Bryce Williams. I think he could be an all Big Ten guy. I think he could also run point if they need him to at times. Like, and if they go to if they want to get a shooting lineup out there, it's probably a Williams, Essegian, Griffiths, Gary, and I don't know if they would go Mia or if they go Berkay or Andrew Morgan. I know Andrew Morgan has had some hype this offseason too from them. I am concerned. It sounds like their starting lineup right now, and this is always flexible, and obviously things can change within weeks and even in season. But like right now, it'd be Worcester, Williams, Gary, Berkay, and Braxton Mia. That is not shooting at all. There is none out there except for Bryce Williams. So that worries me. I think their defensive system is closer to Northwestern of like, if you don't need the best individual defenders, as long as you can have guys buy into the system. So like, and I also think Fred Hoiberg is a good coach. So the upside's there. They're like the rest of this Penn State, Washington, Minnesota group, where it's just like the upside is clearly there to me. But also somebody has to finish 18th in this conference. I don't know who it'll be. One last thing on them, and I don't know how much it'll affect this year, but like long term, the Keisei Tominaga replacement is Nick Janowski.
Yeah,
the dude,
he's good.
The high school film I watched, he didn't play like super high level, like he wasn't in the Nike stuff or whatever. But like the one game I watched, I think he had like 7 threes in the first quarter, and it was like a playoff game. Like the dude's just a gamer and lefty and will shoot from 35 feet. I don't know if he impacts too much this year, but long term, he's the answer.
I was watching. I remember I watched. Did he go to Pewaukee? Is that the school? I was watching them versus Wisconsin Lutheran, who had Connor Newell, and like
that was the game I think I watched.
That was like a cultural revelation of shooting. Watching those two go head to head. Yeah, he's fun. So like you said, somebody has to finish last in this league. Sam, by the way, I was like about to text you to put that comment up on the screen. But yeah, do we have any final thoughts here on the Big Ten as a whole?
Joe, what are your thoughts on the?
Sam, you muted your mic.
Did he mute on purpose? Was that like, I didn't know if that was like a bit.
I have no idea what just
were you going to say the Pac-4 teams joining?
No. What are your thoughts on not every team makes the tournament?
Oh, the Big Ten tournament. I thought you meant the NCAA tournament. I was like, yeah, that's going to happen. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't hate it. I think it'll make it more interesting. But there is also, especially I live in Indiana, like, the Hoosiers movie and all that. Like, it's kind of instilled from a young age. Like, once postseason comes, any team can, in theory, make a run. So it does take that aspect away. But also, like, realistically, the 18th seed's never winning. I think I would be shocked if it stays around. More of just like, I think coaches are going to really, really push for that to go away. More of because like, if you're on the hot seat and you miss the Big Ten tournament, that's a lot of ammunition. But from a viewing standpoint, it'll make it fun. It'll make the discussion of the bottom teams more interesting too.
Yeah, I don't think I said this on the earlier show when we were discussing this, but like, it doesn't really bother me that much that you're going to keep like the bottom 4 teams in the league out. Like, in terms of like past like conference tournament stuff, like the run from like a bottom seed that I can remember like most vividly is like from like a really bad team is like, there was a year where like 14 seed Rutgers won a couple games in the Big Ten tournament. That would have been like 2018. something like that. But yeah, like it just like doesn't bother me that teams are like that are going to go 3-17
Yeah, I mean they went
conference play aren't
3-15
going to make it.
and then beat Minnesota and Indiana and lost to Purdue.
Yeah.
So like that's not even like a deep run.
No.
I don't like. I think that for a high major league, like I'm kind of apathetic. But for mid-major leagues, I legitimately think that like those tournaments should not feature everybody because like you need to give more incentive for the regular season in the mid-major leagues where everything comes down to the tournament.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I've always been the one to like kind of agree with you on that point that like mid-major league should absolutely maximize their chance to like get their best team into the NCAA tournament. I'm also of the like mindset that like I like when in the NCAA tournament we are still seeing like elite teams playing deep into the tournament and we don't have a Final Four like we had 2 years ago where no seed was like was better than a 4. So I'm also like kind of the mindset of like, oh, if we keep mid-major conference tournaments like that, like the chance of having Final Fours like that are less likely.
I think that's it.
Yeah. You want to take us home?
Oh, I haven't thought about this.
2 hours and 15 minutes and you don't have anything.
So
you want me to take us home?
No, I'm gonna need to think for a second though.
Okay. Here, I'll stall. Joe, who's your Big Ten Player of the Year off the top of your head?
Right now, it's Braden Smith. I think he's the best player in the Big Ten. The discussion around him has been interesting. I think he's going to be fine. Like I said, I watched all his minutes without Edey. I wrote an article. Like he's going to be good. Purdue. I think some of it's just hate, whatever. There's internet trolls, but I think some of the discourse has been like last year. I framed it this way. Last year, if you were to put up Edey versus the entire Big Ten conference of who would win Big Ten Player of the Year, you'd pick Edey, right? He was like, that's still who you would pick. This year, if you did that, you're picking the fields. But like as of right now, Braden Smith still has like the highest chance to win it.
Yeah, I would bet like I don't know if like Braden Smith's upside is like tremendous where like the numbers will allow him to win it, but like I completely understand why he's the preseason pick to win it. And I think he's a really safe bet to like be on the first team. I just like I'd probably guess that like somebody emerges who averages like better numbers or like maybe has like a higher impact two ways than he does.
The question is just who is that right now?
Right.
And it could be like 15 dudes.
Yeah. And it's much easier to pick Braden Smith in the preseason to win it than try to like throw a dart and guess who that's going to be.
Yep.
Sam, you ready?
If you came to hear about Tyler Self and where he's working, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about Sky Clark's relationship with Mick Cronin, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Drill, you came to the right place. This is season 5, episode 25 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bitch Dealers, our 2024-25 Big Ten preview with Joe Jackson. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back in about 45 minutes for the Big East, and we'll see you then.